Stanley Cup and NBA playoffs. Toronto falls to Florida last night in Game 7. So now in the Eastern Conference, it's going to be the Panthers taking on Carolina. That's going to start tomorrow, while out west, it's Dallas versus Edmonton. That's going to begin on Wednesday. 3 of the 4 teams were in the conference finals last year, Carolina being the only new team. They take over for the Rangers, who were in last year. And we'll get more with hockey as Joe Yuran will join the show at 4 and Paul Hamilton will join the show at 5. In the NBA, in the East, it is Indiana versus the Knicks. That's going to begin on Wednesday, while out west, it's Minnesota OKC. That's going to start tomorrow. Minnesota and Indiana, they've never won an NBA title. The Knicks last won in 1973, and the Thunder have never won one in Oklahoma City, but did win a title as the Seattle Supersonics that back in 1979. To the Bandits, they did drop Game 2 to the Rush. They'll now have to wait until Saturday for the series deciding Game 3. That game will be in Buffalo and right here on WGR. Today, the Philadelphia Eagles did officially announce a multi-year contract extension for head coach Nick Sirianni. That was not the only thing the Eagles have done today, as they reportedly are bringing in former Jets general manager Joe Douglas to be part of their front office. Douglas was originally part of the Eagles back in 2016 to 2019. And Scottie Scheffler, he wins his 3rd career major on Sunday. He takes home the PGA Championship, and we'll get more on this when Brian Kosil joins the show at 6. That's your Paddock Chevrolet Sports Update. Paddock Chevrolet celebrating 90 years of being your hometown dealership. I'm Zach Jones for WGR Sports Radio 550.
It's Mike Schopp and the Bulldog.
I got a speeding ticket in the mail yesterday.
In the mail?
Yeah. I think I'm going to just ignore it.
It's Mike Schopp
Where was this?
Spain.
and the Bulldog.
I think if I just lay low, I think I'll get away with it.
Not mention it on the air?
Definitely don't want to talk about it on the air.
It's Mike Schopp and the Bulldog
I like the sound of this more and more as we go. I'm an outlaw.
on WGR Sports Radio 550.
All right, hey, all right, everybody. Good afternoon. I am the Bulldog. Mike Schopp has the day off. Zach Jones alongside. And we have a pretty juicy day from yesterday to sink our teeth into. I think anyway. We'll see how you all feel about that as we go. Maybe some of you won't. I won't find out whether you like this idea and conversation. But if I hear from some of you, that will give me some degree of a clue. We are yet another year further down the road from the Toronto Maple Leafs having won the Stanley Cup. 58 years now. The Leafs have gone without the Cup. They won in 1967 and have not won since. And look, this is not a Toronto show. This is a Buffalo show. But I feel like there is, I've got some things to say about the Leafs and the game and the whole of it. But I feel like there is an opportunity to have a conversation about how many of you and even me are feeling about the Bills as they compare to the Leafs. I think there is a certain amount of synergy there from a not being able to get to the final destination standpoint. And how long do you go? One of the best teams in the league year over year. That is very true of the Bills. It has been very true of the Leafs. And that's why there's so much bitterness when, one or the other, really, we care more about the Bills here, don't come through in the end and keep hitting their head on a familiar ceiling. In the case of the Bills, it's more so one team. For a while for the Leafs, it was the Bruins, but it's really been anybody they play in the playoffs. Usually, they haven't been past the second round in a long, long time now, and got eliminated again last night on home ice in a Game 7 that was as meek a performance as you could have in front of your fans. It might be like a legendarily meek performance in front of your fans if they hadn't just put maybe an unbeatable score on the board a few nights earlier in Game 5. They had 2 home games in this series, tied 2-2 and tied 3-3, and got outscored 12-2 in the 2 games. 6-1 the score in both games, and neither game would be a situation where you would go, oh, yeah, but it was much closer than that. In fact, I would say last night's game, which it's funny, like I watched all of Game 5. I don't really remember anything about it because it gets blown out of the water by the Game 7 performance from Toronto. I would say that the Leafs were incredibly fortunate to get out of the first period tied 0-0. Although they did have their best 10 minutes of the game really in the back half of the first period. So, I mean, maybe you could even argue that they could have taken a lead there. But, hang a banner. We had a good 10 minutes in Game 7 is maybe something you could. We've got a lot of creative people out there that do this for the Bills, or really more pointedly the Sabres, hanging stupidly worded banners. But for the Leafs, it was incredible to turn on a Game 7 and feel like the home team was the team that needed to survive the first 10 minutes of the game. Right? That is usually, you can almost bank on it. You turn on any playoff game, but the later you get in the series, the more juice this sort of comment has, the more likely you are to hear it. But you'll hear it in Game 1 of a series about the road team. You'll hear it in Game 5 about the road. Got to survive the first 10 minutes. The crowd's going to be juiced. This team's going to come barreling out of the dressing room. Fans are at a fever pitch, waving pom-poms or T-shirts or whatever, and they're going to be, it's going to be hell. We just got to put our head down, play a simple game, and just try to get to the second TV timeout and catch our breath. And that was really the position Toronto was in last night, hosting the Florida Panthers in a Game 7. It was just ridiculous. Not up to it in any way, shape, or form. So there are things about the Leafs most interestingly, I think, to talk about from a Buffalo perspective might be Mitch Marner at some point. Not that it's realistic at all, but it's worth dreaming about, I think, because of the reputation that some of these guys have now. And really the core four, Marner, Matthews, Tavares, and William Nylander. And that is where the crossover, to me, sort of comes in with the Bills. I think, for me anyway, as an observer of the league, the NHL I'm talking about, my stance mostly on the Leafs through this era, all right, with these guys, with these high picks, Matthews a 101, the free agent signing of Tavares, what the Leafs were building and trying to win with. I mostly would. You get to the end, you lose to a good team, whether it's in the first round or a couple of times here recently in the second round. You get there and you lose, and, well, it's hockey, and, there's bad breaks, and the other team is really good, and you've got a lot of talent. Keep going. Keep going. Sort of like Sean McDermott says, right? There's the crossover. You keep knocking on the door until it opens. Or you break it down from knocking so persistently and so hard. And that has been how I have felt about the Leafs through this, and mostly how I would say I have felt about the Bills. I mean, the Bills have changed out personnel here. The core of the team really is Josh Allen and Deion Dawkins. I think you could say maybe Ed Oliver's in that core, but a lot of it has changed over the years. You started out with Tremaine Edmonds, now you've got Terrell Bernard. You started out with Tre'Davious White, and now you've got Christian Benford as your number one corner. So you had Stephon Diggs for a while. Now you've got everybody eats. So the personnel has changed, and the Leafs have really, they've changed. I guess around that core they've changed over the years, and they don't. No hockey team is the exact same team year over year. It just does not work that way. They've also done something the Bills have yet to do during this stretch of 5 straight division titles, and that is change management and or coaches. This all started out for the Leafs with Austin Matthews and Nylander and Marner with Babcock as their coach, and he eventually went by the wayside, and in here comes Sheldon Keefe, He rides for a while, and we've reached it. We've gone as far as we can go with this. We need a coach who can instill a more disciplined defensive style. Any of this sound familiar? And Berube comes in this year. And I would say that was relatively successful. The Leafs played more like a team prepared to play in the playoffs through the whole season and through the first round than maybe they ever have during that core's existence. But these two games at home within the last week, Game 5 and Game 7, it's got to be enough. I could no longer objectively from far away, and I recognize like this is an easier thing to do. Most of the pushback I ever got about saying this about the Leafs, it wasn't a ton of feedback. Again, we're not in Toronto, and I recognize that, but we do share some audience here, and certainly plenty of Toronto hockey fans are also Bills fans and NFL fans. So, I feel like the audience is mixed enough. The pushback would be, like, it's easy for you to say you're not a fan. And that's right. I mean, I agree. I think being a fan can make you more passionate about it. And when you are passionate about things, you can tend to overreact. It's why, I think it's best in life. It doesn't always work this way, but I think it's best in life if you can avoid making decisions about important stuff when you're running hot. Because when you're running hot, you are more prone to make a mistake and overreact. So, yeah, of course, I'm not a Leaf fan. I'm a hockey fan. I like when Toronto does well. I think it's a cool story in the league. That's really all of it for me with them, by the way. I mean, sure, my friend John Gale was sitting in my living room yesterday. He's a proud Canadian, born and raised in Port Colborne, has lived all over Canada and all over the world, but lives here now. And, he was a teenager when the Leafs won in 1967. He's been waiting. He never even got wound up about it last night. It was almost a non-event. It wasn't even very, very emotional, as it turned out, sitting in the living room watching it. But it would be impossible now for me to say they don't need to change anything. And where the crossover comes in to me with maybe more exclusively our audience and Bills fans is how close to that ledge are you on the Bills? We've seen 5 straight division titles. We've seen tons of points. We've seen what is it? The best record over this stretch of time, these 5 years, to have not won a Super Bowl. In other words, no other team has won more games in a time span since the Bills started winning the AFC East in 2020. No other team in football has won as many games as the Bills have without winning the Super Bowl. Or maybe it's without reaching the Super Bowl. Either way, you know where the ceiling is, and you know where the Bills keep hitting their heads on. It's the Chiefs, and it's been the AFC title game twice. It's been the divisional round twice, and you can't get by it. And I struggle. Like Mike a while ago, I think maybe even pretty early on after the season ended, after another disappointing, heartbreaking loss at the hands of the Chiefs in the AFC title game back in January, they're like, I think this might be it. And I struggle with that because I you kind of want to see it, right? Like what happens? How did it go? Who, if anyone, or maybe a few different people, who have the smoking gun of ineptitude? Like who caused the Bills to hit their head again? And we all know the history. And the case has been made multiple times about McDermott's shortcomings, chiefly 13 seconds, which is unavoidable in any kind of conversation like this. You've had this history where the same outcome. It's not always the same script, but it's the same outcome. I can't get by it, and I wonder. Now, I mean, not that you need the Leafs for the comparison, but it's a frame of reference here. I would tell you I'm done supporting them continuing to keep going. I mean, they really have no choice now. Some of the choices are actually going to be made for them. Tavares and Marner's contracts are up. They are unrestricted free agents July 1. And so I would anticipate, considering that they already had a trade set up, think about how different so much of this could have been if Mitch Marner agrees to go to Colorado. Wait, no, it was Carolina. It was the second time he got traded. Rantanen was in Carolina, miserable. Carolina knew they weren't going to sign him to an extension. Let's try to get out of this. And they ended up shipping him to Dallas. That was around the deadline. And the Leafs it came to be known, the Leafs had a trade lined up, sending Marner to Carolina. I don't remember if there were any other particulars. I don't think it particularly matters whether there were or not. The kingpins of the trade were Marner and Rantanen. And Marner, holding no trade protection, killed it. And so, no contract extension. He stood in the way of the Leafs making a move to change their core four in advance of the playoffs, and then, on top of it all, failed to come through in the playoffs once again. He's done there. I mean, it's over. It's not turning around. So, to support trying to keep that thing together seems just ridiculous at this point. A part of my sort of consistent stance of keep going, keep knocking on the door, like McDermott says, as it pertains to Toronto, has largely been, well, these guys are young and they're under contract, and what are you doing? Right? You're probably going to have a hard time winning any trade. Now, I think Rantanen from Marner would have been a pretty fair trade, and the Leafs might have even won the trade. Rantanen's had one of the best playoffs in history this year with Dallas. So Marner's done. There's no way that they could bring him back, even on some kind of sweet hometown discount, if that were even realistic. It's over for him. Blocking that trade and then not coming through again, forget it. On the Bills' end of that, really the thing that they haven't done, which I've already alluded to, that Toronto has done a couple of times. I mean, they changed out Kyle Dubas and as GM, and I already gave you the rundown on the coaching track. So they have tried that already. What they've never done is really change the key personnel. I wonder what kind of appetite Bills fans would have. I shouldn't say Bills fan. I know some of the fan base. I've never wanted to say it was most or a majority or anything like that, but it's a persistent group, and it probably is ever growing. Because the longer you go without winning, the more that winning the Super Bowl, getting to the Super Bowl. The longer you go without doing that, people that are holding out on, I got to change the coach, start I hear you. I guess maybe I don't know what else to do. I guess I'll do that, because they've changed again. Plenty of personnel. We're on to a second rotation of fortify the defense. That's my problem. I can't stop the Chiefs. I mean, that was the story after 2020, but especially after 2021. I got to get pass rushers. I got to get Von Miller. I got to draft AJ Epinesa. I got to draft Gregory Rousseau. I got to draft Boogie Basham. I got to do all this to try to combat what the Chiefs are doing to me. So personnel, we've been through it. They've not changed any part of significantly the hierarchy. I mean, some assistant GMs have moved on to become GMs. Some assistant coaches have moved to other assistant coaching positions. I don't think Daboll got a head coaching job after a highly successful run here as coordinator, but they've not changed the top guys. And I wonder if fans are just going to be, we get through this season. Here's why I sort of get self-conscious, because I don't want to speak in a way that says I'm expecting them to fall short. But if it were to happen again, I just feel like we're not really going to have a better idea. And in saying that, I'm not saying it's indefensible to consider changing out McDermott. I'm bored. I don't know what else to do. Fire him and start over. What I am saying is it's a place on the board that we have been talking about and considering. Part of my trouble in getting any traction in the conversation is that I haven't really ever felt like it was a realistic possibility within ownership. I just don't think that they think they have a problem. That does not mean they don't. And maybe another year will come and go, and the amount of fans that are just, I can't keep doing this. Again, like Toronto, we keep doing the same thing. Something's got to give. Something's got to change. And I think it's pro sports. The people running the teams, coaches and GMs, do not get to have jobs for life. They usually get changed out well before the players do. And so we've got this, Nick Costas had this stat about coaches and quarterbacks together as long as McDermott and Allen have been together. Never, what is it, like after 5 years?
It's 5 years, yeah.
They don't even get to the Super Bowl, let alone win it. Like those relationships don't get as much time normally. So I don't know. I hope I'm not sort of weaving too wildly all over the road here and mixing in the Toronto Maple Leafs and our beloved Buffalo Bills. But I feel like synergy is not exact. There's just a comparison to be made within the franchises and the fan bases about your appetite for change. The fans are always ahead of the owners and the GMs if they're talking about replacing a coach. I mean, that's natural. The appetite that I have sensed for the Bills to make a move on McDermott as these seasons have wound down, it came earlier than I ever thought it would. Like, I was stunned at how much traction it had just after 13 seconds. And I know that what the scorecard tells you is if you felt that way in January of 21, or it would have been January of 22 following the 21 season, if you felt that way then, you have not been proven wrong. I mean, that's obviously readily apparent because they have not gotten any farther than they did. They got as far last year as they did in 2020. And so they're kind of running in place and no change has been made. And maybe you get to a place where even if you've been relatively supportive, like I feel like I have been mostly, I mean, I've had my moments. Talk about speaking, and I mean, I don't get to make decisions. I get to make a decision about what I want to say and how I'm feeling. And man, after that Eagle game year before last, I was hot. I was done. I can't keep doing this. So we've all maybe reached that point at different times, but I ended up, I don't know, walking it back is a very popular phrasing. I don't know. I mean, I said I was wrong. That's walking it back, I guess, right? I want that back because I think there's been a lot more good than bad with McDermott and Bean running the Bills. So I remain what I think is very supportive. I am rooting for, especially for McDermott. I feel like we hear from him more. I talk to him more. I don't know if I've talked to Brandon Bean on the air once or twice maybe in the whole time he's been here. McDermott used to be weekly with us, and then he was on intermittently with us again last year, which was nice to be able to revisit that relationship with him. The sit-down he just recently did with Sal and Matt Beauvais, he comes across like, I think, to me, any one of you out there that will call and tell me what you want and how badly you want it and how much it means to you. Dermott is entirely, in my opinion, believable in that way. So, like, I'm rooting for him. I think it'd be a great story, just like I was rooting for the Leafs. It's not just because of my friend John Gale, and it's not because of proximity or the uniforms that they've been around since the invention of pro hockey. It's the story. I mean, all of that makes their story more compelling. Can't do it. I am an endless sucker for the narrative of a team that can't break through. Ovechkin's never going to win the cup. You want some old stereotype? He's Russian. He doesn't care that much about the Stanley Cup as much as the good Canadian boys do. And, they're never going to make it. And then until they did, and then they won. Like that happening in sports to me is almost what it's all about. You're doubted. You're contending. You're excellent. Fall short, fall short, fall short, fall short. You're never going to do it. Break it up. They're fatally cursed. Bodies are buried under the rink or the goalpost or something, right? All this stuff. And then, oh, they did it. What happened? They did it. That's what I was rooting for with Toronto. I think anything that gives you hope, even if you're not a Toronto fan, we're in Buffalo. We're very familiar, intimately familiar with the Leafs and their fan base. That fan base, I know they'd be insufferable in the capes and the tinfoil cups and all the stuff that I've made fun of them about for decades here on the radio. But it would be a story if you can pull back from the emotion of being a Sabres fan and not liking the Leafs or hating the Leafs. You would have to admit that is the most compelling story in the playoffs. I think it was even a more compelling story than Connor McDavid chasing his first Stanley Cup, because of the duration. It's like anything like that in sports that gives you hope, I think can then give other people, i.e. Bills fans, that same hope. Well, look, they stuck with it and they did it. They're not fatally cursed. They're not flawed in some way that you can't repair it. And that McDermott and the Bills, to me, are that same sort of narrative. So I'm pulling for them. Obviously, I mean, did I even need to say that? I mean, I work here. I live here. I love the Bills. But I think objectively, without an emotional attachment, it would be a great story if they finally broke through with that coach. But how long do you want to go? I think the Leafs have hit their end point, at least from a roster construction standpoint. I doubt that they're going to change the coach out. They just did that last year. So it'll be time to move the players around and the important pieces around. Just a massive letdown. And that had to be for them last night. What a disaster. I'll save it. I got plenty of time, and I'm already late to the first break because I'm a moron. 803-0550 is the number. You get the gist of what I'm talking about here? Patience. How much of it do you have left? That kind of thing. Any just general observations on the Leafs flailing like they did in games 5 and 7, also definitely welcomed. Our old friend Joe Yuran with Bleacher Report was in Toronto for both game 5 and game 7. He'll be with me at 4. We'll pour over all of this with Paul Hamilton at 5. And Brian Kosil will join me at 6 to go over Scotty Scheffler's major win in the PGA yesterday in North Carolina. So that is what's to come in between. Lots of time for your calls. So hit it up. 803-0550 is the number. Mike is off today along with Zach Jones. I am the Bulldog, and you're listening to WGR.
I guess you could boo like the fans there, but you're not going to be doing that. But you understand why they did.
This is brutal. This is men versus boys right now, completely unprepared. I think they've lost every single 50-50 puck battle. Don't know else how to describe it, but pathetic performance.
That is Paul Bissonnette on the TNT broadcast intermission show. I believe that was after period number 2. Saw the Leafs get blitzed in the opening 10 minutes of period 1. Play a pretty solid back half of that period, but still scoreless. And then in the span of about 6.5 minutes, 3-0, and it's guys. Who? What? Who? Gajakov? What? What is happening? And then even after that, the third period starts. Right? I'm sure the building's dead. John Gale was breathing on my couch, but he was dead inside. I could tell. And here's a goal. Like 2 minutes into the period. A goal. Like, and I even said, like, hey, okay. 3-1. Get a power play, another good. You make it 3-1. You've got now, and only, again, 2 minutes into the period, it's 3-1. You've got about 15 minutes to get a second goal. Provided you don't give anything up. You got about 15 minutes to get a second goal, make it 3-2, and then pull the goalie and the late blitz and the whole thing. Or you could give up a goal 47 seconds later that makes it 4-1, and that's it. Turn out the lights. It is over, sucker. That was it. So incredible. It was such a letdown. The 2 Game 7s yesterday were just horrendous. The basketball game was, 14-point game at half, and just boat race city for Oklahoma City. I mean, I'm happy about that. I have them in Dallas Stars on parlay with championship winners out there for the future. So, I'm alive. No buyout yet. Somebody's probably got to get on the board with an actual trophy before they start thinking about that. But anyway, just as big a letdown as you could get. Last night in Toronto with that effort. I mean, it's one thing to lose to a great team, and Florida is almost inarguably, I would say, a great team. I mean, they've been to the final 2 years running. They're in the conference final here in a third year with a chance to go to a third straight final. And, I mean, they're just built for it. And it's one thing if it's close. And sure, it's a close series in the end. I mean, 7-game series, but man, 6-1 in Game 5, 6-1 in Game 7 is you got to bust things up when that happens, I think. Rob is first up this segment. Hi, Rob. Thank you for calling. You're on the air here on WGR.
Hey, guys. Long-time listener.
Thank you for listening.
Go all the way back to the coach days, way back.
Nice. Appreciate that.
Yeah, lifetime Leaf fan, lifetime Bills fan. So I'm a manic depressive by nature.
Uh-huh.
But there's been a lot of comparison to the Bills and the Leafs. The Bills, I still have hope. The Bills, and you can tell it by the leadership. We'll take the two best players, Austin Matthews and Josh Allen, right?
Mm-hmm.
I've never seen Josh Allen quit. He's there every playoff game, and the Leafs, they just quit last night. And I've never been so depressed with the Bills. Maybe Super Bowl, I think it was 27 or 28 in the second half against the Cowboys when it just seemed like the air came out of the balloon. And we were leading at the half. But this team I know Marner's gone. There's no way they're going to keep him. Not at that price. I know Tavares is gone. What they need to do is get I'll lose my Leaf fandom for saying this, but they need a Marchand. They really do. They need somebody like that. But the Bills are close. The Bills are just so close. And there's really no – and I don't say that with the Leafs. And they got beat by a better team.
Mm-hmm.
I can live with that. But when the Bills play the Chiefs, they're in the game. One play, 2 plays, they could win. I didn't feel that last night.
Oh, yeah, no question. Yeah. The comparison only goes so far. Rob, thank you for calling. I think, you get to the second round of the Stanley Cup playoffs, you should be anyway. I mean, Carolina didn't exactly have much to deal with Washington. You're going to be playing somebody really good. How close are you? It's observational and it's an opinion. As much as I was rooting for Toronto just for the narrative flipping story that it would be, I don't think they really had a chance. I think Florida's the only team in the East, frankly. I don't like Carolina that much. They got the easiest draw you could have possibly gotten with Montreal and Washington. Forget about the points Washington had. That was not a team that is on the level of Florida. And I don't think Carolina's, they're the better team. They might be the second best team in the East. I mean, they've made it this far. I think Florida should handle them. I don't think Carolina can beat any of, I'm saying any, there's only the two left, but even Winnipeg, if they had gotten off the mat and found a way to win Game 7. I think any one of those three teams out west, Dallas, Edmonton still alive, Winnipeg just got eliminated. I think any one of those three is beating anybody from the East with the exception of Florida. I think Florida is the only team that can pack the lumber to go to battle with those teams out west, especially Dallas. I think that is just and like Carolina wants to play that game, but I just don't think they have enough. Whereas Florida, just the experience they've got, the goaltending, I just think they're set up really well to compete with those teams. So, I want to be careful about representing how close Toronto really was. I don't believe in my heart of hearts if they'd won last night that I would like them against Carolina, I would tell you that much, but I don't think they were going to win the cup. But it's, you get there and who knows, right? So the comparisons only go so far. The fact that the Bills are so close and that Allen has played like he has is what gets you to McDermott. Like, I do not have a kingpin player problem on the Bills. I mean, the most important guy has been Cincinnati game excluded. That's not, I'm not trying to be convenient. That's his one sort of down playoff game. The rest of it has been he's done almost as much as you could ask him to do. I mean, one more drive the last 2 years, we get a whole different story maybe. So, I mean, there's room even within that. But mostly, I think fan sentiment definitely represents this. Is one of the reasons why I like to sort of push back against that with Allen having the ball inside the 2-minute warning with a chance to win 2 years in a row and not coming through. But still, you do not have a star player problem. So what problem do you have then? Well, what else is left? Coach. I've got a coach problem. I've got a defense that can't complement what Allen's doing well enough. And that is different than the Leafs. Really, at this point, I would say the Leafs have the right coach. I mean, the system they installed, I think, gave them a better opportunity this year than really any of the years past. But the star players just could not come through. 803-0550 is the number. Larry's up next. Hi, Larry. Thank you for calling. You're on the air here on WGR.
Hey, Bulldog. How's it going?
Good. Thanks.
Just calling. For me, almost a quick comparison to McDermott is almost Andy Reid when he was with the Eagles. All those years, granted, he didn't have the star quarterback he had with McNabb, but pretty good one. But all those years of getting to NFC championships, I think it was one Super Bowl that they finally broke through but lost. I hate to say it, and I'm kind of with you. I'd love to see McDermott be the coach that takes us all the way. I think he's done a great job bringing back respectability to the organization, bringing back that winning culture, doing everything the right way. But I hate to say it, I almost see him like an Andy Reid with the Eagles, where it's going to be close, but no cigar. I mean, some of those, you look back at the 13 seconds, you look back at some of the coaching decisions, some of it in the big games where he just naturally reverts back to that conservative nature. And I think everything it's bit us in the butt sometimes. I really hope I'm wrong because I'd love to see the guy win here. Obviously, I'd love to see the Bills win with anybody. I don't care who the coach is, who the quarterback. Just give me one.
Yeah.
But I really, it's almost like he's trending where he's going to be that guy that's going to stay here another 2 or 3 years or 4 years, keep getting us close, keep winning AFC East titles, but just not being able to get over that hump.
Thank you for the call, Larry. Yeah, I do think within that you're talking about McDermott and his conservative nature, and I think that definitely was applicable early in this rise. Like, in 2020, in the championship game, there's some as Mike would call them, wimpy field goals. I think he has evolved over the years to the point where I think hanging on to that is mostly unfair. I think he's not really like that anymore, but it's other stuff that has tripped him up and tripped them up. Frankly, just not being able to stop. Maybe conservative in how you're calling your defense within the game. But a lot of the stuff, the aggressiveness on fourth downs, the Bills version of the tush push, like they've done a lot of sort of leading the way in not being conservative, and I give McDermott a lot of credit for changing that part of his coaching makeup. Thank you for the calls. Appreciate it. Still time for you. Of course, you're between now and Joe Yuran coming up at the top of the hour. He was in Toronto for games 5 and 7. So last night, fresh off of that assignment, we'll talk to Joe about all things related to, well, how that series unfolded, the playoffs in general, and, of course, the Sabres way forward. But still time for you to get a call in now at 803-0550. We'll hit up a break, come back after this. I am the Bulldog. Mike is off today, and this is WGR. Happy to have you hanging here with us on a Monday afternoon. Unseasonably cool Monday afternoon for May 19th. I'm going to get a DM from Pat Hammer. I don't know what the stats say, but it just it feels cool. I mean, we were in shorts and tank tops.
It was nice. It was lovely.
Week. Yeah. I played golf yesterday. It was like 52 degrees when we teed off, and 3 hours later, it was still 52 degrees.
That's not right.
What's going on there?
No.
Give me a little something here. Come on. Anyway, glad to have you with us here on a Monday. Mike has the day off today. Zach Jones, fresh off a little long weekend in Pittsburgh, here alongside Joe Yuran coming up at the top of the hour. Paul Hamilton at 5. Been a while since we touched base with Paul. We'll go over the NHL playoffs with both of those guys, and maybe the Amerks too. Joe's been on that beat, and Paul certainly has been as well. So we'll plenty of hockey as we go through today. Some golf at the tail end with Brian Kosil. Not that we have to wait until then to talk about the PGA Championship. One thing, this is maybe it's certainly a matter of personal taste, and might very likely be overly nitpicky by me. But when Rory completed the career Grand Slam at the Masters back in April, the reaction, I mean, that was a catharsis that took place there. And I mean, he was almost convulsing when he was on his knees on the green, like just so emotional that he finally not only completed the career Grand Slam, but won a major after more than 10 years since he had last done it. And so television, CBS, to me, did what you should do in that situation. Just get out of the way. The cameras certainly weren't out of the way. I mean, they were right there, but they followed Rory without Jim Nantz and Trevor Immelman and everyone telling you what was happening. Just let the pictures tell the story. And, he's congratulating and getting congratulations from everyone, leaving the 18th green, the long walk to the scorer's tent, and the whole thing. And it warranted that. I felt like yesterday, yes, Scheffler is the world's number one. He's excellent. It's a third major. It's an achievement. He maybe even is underrated and overshadowed by guys with bigger personalities who've been around longer, like Rory and even like a guy like DeChambeau to some extent. I just thought leaving that scene in silence for as long as they did was weird. I just did not, it felt, weird's not right. You always are going to show that, all of that, but the silence, I just thought it was forced. I'll stop short of saying inappropriate because it wasn't offensive. It just felt to me like someone decided ahead of time, hey, that thing we did when Rory won? That was awesome, and everybody loved it, and people were crying, and we got a lot of positive reactions. Let's just do that again. And I'm sorry, Scotty winning his third major is great, and he's great, and he was emotional. It's just not right anywhere near. It's a major win. It does not rate anywhere near McIlroy and the pursuit he was on for more than 10 years and the career Grand Slam. It just felt a little bit too much like, well, this worked before, so we got a lot of credit for it, so let's do it again. And I thought it was weird. Odd, maybe weird's too strong too. I didn't like it. I thought it was forced. Again, it wasn't offensive. I just thought it was a weird choice.
I kind of got there too. I think it was Adam Schefter tweeted that Scotty was now 50% of the way to the career Grand Slam, and I'm like, I don't know if we totally say that now. Let's let Rory's achievement simmer.
Yeah.
Scotty's still got to win. If he wins a U.S. Open or an Open Championship within this year, we could talk about it. But
sure,
this feels a bit forced.
Yeah, you need to get the third one.
Yeah, before we can really have that conversation.
Yeah, that's it. We don't have to rush to it. It was great. The golf was funny, man. We had the bet. Mike won with Scheffler. And as the day was beginning, I was texting with Brian, and I'm like, oh, we're so dead. And then, Rahm shows up, Well, Mike had Rahm, as it turns out. So I'm rooting for Scheffler because Rahm was going to cost us more. He was on tier 2. He was on the full amount tier, whereas Scheffler was only a 50% payout. But it looked like he was in a rocking chair, and then maybe he kind of blew it / Rahm just took it, and then Scheffler just reasserted himself, and it ended up being a rocking chair in the end down the stretch. But still a tremendous achievement by pointing out what I'm pointing out about the broadcast. I'm not taking anything away from Scheffler. It was fantastic, especially that he sort of got rocked there mid-round and managed to recover. A lot of guys it gets away from them and they're just chasing it and they just never really quite get it all the way back. I mean, he snapped right back to it, I think, in the 10th tee box. Just tremendous outing by him, but just a strange, I thought, choice by the broadcast at the end. 803-0550 is the number. I just said that out of habit because Joe Yuran is coming up here, and so we'll take calls after that at about 4:30. So stay tuned. Joe Yuran was in Toronto for games 5 and 7 of this Leaf-Panther series. We'll get the lowdown on what he witnessed as we continue here on WGR.
playoffs, Toronto fell in 7 to Florida last night, and now in the East, it'll be Florida versus Carolina. That's going to start tomorrow, while out West, it's Dallas versus Edmonton. That's going to begin on Wednesday. And 3 of the 4 teams, they were in the conference finals last year, with Carolina being the only new team. They take the Rangers spot from last year. We'll get more on the hockey as Joe Yuran will join the show next. In the NBA, out east, it is Indiana versus the Knicks. A little bit of a 90s throwback there. That's going to begin on Wednesday, while out west, it's Minnesota OKC. That's going to start tomorrow, Minnesota and Indiana. They have never won an NBA title. The Knicks have not won one since 1973. And while the Thunder have not won one as the Oklahoma City Thunder, they did win a title as the Seattle Supersonics, that all the way back in 1979. Some other playoff action from over the weekend. The Bandits dropped Game 2 to the Rush. We'll now have to wait until Saturday for the series-deciding Game 3. That game is going to be in Buffalo. Some NFL news from today. The Philadelphia Eagles officially announced a multi-year contract extension for head coach Nick Sirianni, and the Eagles are also reportedly bringing in former Jets general manager Joe Douglas to be part of their front office. Douglas part of the Eagles from 2016 to 2019. And then Scotty Scheffler. He wins his 3rd career major on Sunday. He takes home the PGA Championship, and we'll get more on that when Brian Kosil joins the show in just about 2 hours at 6 o'clock. That's your Paddock Chevrolet Sports Update. Paddock Chevrolet celebrating 90 years of being your hometown dealership. I'm Zach Jones for WGR Sports Radio 550.
It's Mike Schopp and the Bulldog.
They have this Panther sound effect that is just the cheesiest, stupidest sounding thing. Big voice guy going, Panther goal scored by Sam Reinhart. Where'd you get that thing?
I trapped it. Been keeping it in my bathroom at the motel, feeding it old pizza.
It's Mike Schopp.
If you're calm, that wondrous big cat will be calm too. But if you're scared, that beautiful death machine will do what God made it to do. Namely, eat you with a smile on its face.
And the Bulldog. On WGR Sports Radio 550.
You know you have one of the stupidest jobs on earth when it makes you feel good. It's a sign that you've been doing a good job, that you've created something on the radio that's memorable enough that complete strangers, well, I shouldn't say complete strangers. I don't know that I don't know some of you who tweeted me about this, nor do I think the audience is exactly strangers. Like we know, you know me on some level. I'm not always sure who you are, but people reaching out to let me know when they hear Florida goals announced that they think of me. I mean, it's you know, listen, we all gotta have something, and for me, you know, 30 years on the radio. I mean, yeah, how'd it go? Well, people liked when I did this cat noise. Yeah, no, seriously, yeah, they pay me. Joe Yuran is on the West Her Hotline here with us to talk about last night's. I don't know, Joe. What word? I read your story. I don't remember what any of the words you used. Debacle? I don't know. No show. What was it like being in Toronto for these 2 hockey games?
You know, it's incredible to watch a team that was as good as the Maple Leafs were, and they were a good team. You know, they were a different team. They seemed like a team that was ready to grow up, I guess, you know, from being the high flying big scorers to being a little bit more sound defensively, and you know, the grow up point where every Stanley Cup team makes, right? And they totally bagged it at home in 2 games where they had to have wins. Completely bagged it, because if they win Game 5, they're up 3-2, you're going to Florida, maybe you wrap it up. Oh, okay, well, you played god-awful Game 5. I think that's the worst playoff performance I had ever watched until the second and third periods last night.
Game 7 came in to say, hold my beer. Right, yeah.
Yeah, you know, and the crazy part is that last night, the first 6 minutes of that game was horrendous for Toronto. You know, they were outshot 7-0, out attempted 21-0. They're lucky it was still 0-0. And then Nyes makes a move in the offensive zone, gets a scoring chance, and then the light bulb went off, and it was all Toronto the rest of the period. And you're thinking like, oh, well, if they keep this up, they're going to win.
Right. Or at least we're going to have a toe-to-toe heavyweight fight on our hands that's going to hold our attention for another 2 hours. Whoops.
Right. And then, there's a bad turnover, which, the Toronto's been superbly guilty of doing that all series long. And it turns into Seth Jones no fault to Joe Wall. That was a snipe. You pick the far corner from the other, the opposite wing, like that's an incredible shot. But that's the moment where the mood in the house changes, and it's you can feel it as a media member. You can certainly feel it if you're a fan there, because you're like, oh geez, here we go again. But the worst part of that is that it's the players. The players were just like,
right,
all right, here we go, and then boom, boom, boom. 10 minutes later, it's 3-0, and that's game.
Yeah. That the players, we don't know what's going on in all of their, in all of their heads. But it's one thing. It's understandable for the fan. The fan base has been through all that. Of course, some of those players have been too. But they're supposed to be the ones that are armed with, this supreme level of confidence and go do your job and all that stuff. The fans, of course, the fans panic. Oh my God, it's 1-0. Oh. But to see the team just unravel like that. I don't know what's worse, the 3 goals in 6.5 minutes in the second period or the start you referenced, Joe. I mean, how many times has it been written or said for the road team in any Stanley Cup playoff game, but especially a Game 7, regardless of the round, you just got to survive the first 10 minutes. You're the home team. Like, why are you ducking and covering trying to survive the first 10 minutes?
And at least for the 10 minutes, that was Barkov and Reinhart and Rodriguez who came back in Game 7 last night. Yeah, at least when you're getting run over by those guys, or even, Kachuk's line with Verhaeghe, okay, great. If you're going to get beat by the best. And they took every punch from those guys in that first 10 minutes, which, okay, great. But, the entire play was in the Toronto end of the ice. The only time there was any relief was if it got chipped out or Florida mishandled it and got out of the zone. They had nothing. They had absolutely nothing for that. And then, when the game unravels in the end, they're getting schooled by Marchand. Marchand Bennett and Lou Osterainen. Those guys had a field day with no matter who was put out there against them. They schooled them. And I mentioned it a couple of times in the flow of the game. They globetrotted them. And I think that's a term that I think we've all starting to use when a team is just running circles around another one in their zone. But, when you're getting schooled, and listen, this is not to take away from Brad Marchand or Sam Bennett or Eetu Luostarinen or whoever was on defense. It didn't matter which two guys were back there. They controlled the play. They got the puck back constantly, and Toronto just kept giving it back to them. And, it's Matthews and Marner and Tavares and Nylander rightfully getting crushed for their performance because it was bad. But it was a package deal last night. Morgan Riley had a horrendous game, a really bad series. Jake McCabe was guilty of trying way too hard to do way too much. He's got a certain role, and he was trying to do that, but then he's also first man in on the puck on a dump in. He's trying to get shots off. He's doing way too much, which, hey, guilt, crime of passion, fine, whatever. At least you're trying. Somebody's trying. But to hear Austin Matthews after the game say we had too many passengers, and for Craig Berube to agree with it and back it up, and Mitch Marner to say, too many guys going for a ride tonight. It's Game 7. You guys have had 6 Game 7s as this group, 4, 5, 6 Game 7s as just this group as it's construed. These main 4 guys, this core 4, they've had a bunch of these. How do you not read the riot act to the rest of your room to say, listen, we've been through this before. We're sick and tired of losing these games. If anybody isn't picking up their socks tonight, get ready because we're going to pound you in the locker room in the intermission.
Right.
I mean, geez.
It just doesn't make sense that they played such a fine road game in Game 6 in between these two disasters. I mean, that could – listen, again, we don't – you talk to guys after the game. I'm not in the room. I think we make a lot of assumptions about what guys are feeling based on what the results end up being. But when you have a giant egg laid in Game 5 and then go on the road and play just a tremendous road game to even the thing back up at 3 and then come back in front of your home fans, it does feel it feels right to say the pressure just ate those guys alive.
Yeah, and I got a question to Paul Maurice after the game last night because he coached the Leafs. He coached against the Leafs the last time they were in the Eastern Conference Final, which I completely forgot he was Carolina's coach.
That's 2002, right?
2002.
Yeah.
And if you're going to get a line from somebody that is going to be able to really tie a bow on what it's all about, Paul Maurice is the guy to at least try to ask. And I think the way I phrased it was, I don't know if this was the right way or if it was, too sassy or whatever, but I said, you've coached against them, you've coached here. Is there a moment when you're playing against this team in these moments that, something happens and you go, okay, we got them. And, he kind of brushed it aside and said, well, I'm still rolling Barkov out there, up 5-1 with 4 minutes to go. So I don't ever think you've got him, and he just goes into this thought about how, what's good for the league is bad for Toronto and the pressure that comes with it and all that stuff. It just really, it's a huge deal. And, Marchand kind of commented on that as well after the game, saying it's unfair. It's kind of unfair how much pressure, whatever. Pressure is part of the game, and I think Brad knows that pretty well from playing in Boston. But there's no doubt. And, I've been going up there covering Leafs playoff games here for a few years for Bleacher Report now, and there are moments where something bad happens and you just feel the entire temperature of the room change because of everything that goes into what it is to be the Leafs, the attention, the pressure, all that stuff. And they've insulated these guys pretty well, at least in the building, away from, media, media is not evil, but the questions are direct and tough. And, those guys got them last night, but the mood changes very quickly up there. And I think this happens in a lot of home markets. We see it happen here. That's for darn sure. And this isn't even playoff pressure here. This is just win enough games to get in the playoff picture pressure in Buffalo. In Toronto, it's, they've gone to the playoffs now 9 years in a row. And, getting there is no longer that's no longer the worry. It's like they're getting there now. Now it's like, okay, well, we've got these superstars. We got to win a cup. They're not even getting a chance to play for the cup now because second round rolls around, and it's only happened twice that they've gotten to the second round. Right. The tents fold up immediately, and it's incredible.
I do want to squeeze in a mention here of something that came across my eyes at some point here while this, I don't know if collapse is too strong here, but, Toronto did have a 2-0 lead in the series and a 3-1 lead in Game 3, so collapse maybe is appropriate. That Ovechkin's Capitals have only been past the second round the year they won the Cup in 2018. Other than that, he had never been past the second round, and that happened again this year. So, it's one of the things I like so much when a team, a group of players that have been under that scrutiny can tip it upside down. I was never the biggest Washington fan. I liked Ovechkin from the minute he showed up. I was rooting so hard in 2018, Joe, for them to get there just because I like when because I live in a market and talk about two teams that have never won anything. And I like it when a team that has that reputation can put up the stop sign and go, no, look, we did it. And because I think that gives you hope that, my guys can do it too. But Toronto's got to be, I pretty much over the course of the core four's existence at times like this been, you know what? Sort of like Sean McDermott says about the Bills, Joe. Keep knocking on the door. I don't know, man. I think you got to go to a different house. Something's got to change. Something substantial besides the GM and the coach, which they've already done multiple times.
Yeah, they're at a spot now where, well, I mean, this is the thing. Like the last few years for Bleacher Report, after Toronto's gotten knocked out, the story I've written is, all right, well, who goes? Which of the players goes? Because you got to do something, because it feels like a very early mid 90s Detroit position. Once Detroit stopped being getting kicked around, and they started becoming the Red Wings that we saw in the 90s. There was that time where they get beat in the first round by San Jose, and you're like, well, how do you do that? And then they're the best team in the league in 95. Make it to the Cup final. They're like, oh, they're going to steamroll the Devils. Devils sweep them because the Devils played mean, nasty hockey. And everybody's like, oh, God, what do you do? And then 96, the Claude Lemieux thing happens, and that lit the fire. But they still had to make moves even after that. They didn't run it back with Dino Ciccarelli and Keith Primo and Paul Coffey. They said, no, those guys got to go. We got to get Brendan Shanahan in here. We got to do something else. We got to get a little meaner, a little more edge, a little bit more – having a little bit more guts on your group to be able to get over, because we're getting bullied out here. Toronto's gotten bullied by Florida, 2 of the last 3 years. And, not you can't copy what Florida does. That's impossible. But like, if you're Toronto, don't you try to raid them in free agency? Sam Bennett's a free agent. Marchand's a free agent. Marchand said last night he grew up a Leafs fan, which I don't think any of us knew that. But, don't you make a bid on one of these guys and say, hey, listen, you know what we're dealing with here. Help us out. Let's try to figure this out.
Yeah, they have the good fortune here of having some decisions, I don't want to say made for them. I mean, because they could make an effort to re-sign Marner and maybe especially Tavares at a more reasonable number, given his desire to stay put. But the fact that those contracts are up sort of, to an extent, frees them up to go do the shopping that you're, referring to. And, unlike what we deal with here in Buffalo with the taxes and the palm trees, Joe, Toronto, yes, it's a pressure cooker. Yes, expectations are sky high. But I think any kid, especially Canadian kid, like you're talking about Marchand and Bennett, guys like that, I think, are wired to want to go win there. So that'll be an attractive destination, I think, for the top shelf free agents. Yeah, and the thing with Marner that gets me, and I saw the on ice photos, the photo that was on my piece it went up very early this morning post game, where it's just, you see that anguish in his face, and you just kind of know in the back of your head he just played his last game with his hometown team. He grew up around Toronto. The stories of his old man supposedly bullying Toronto to take him, and trying to make it uncomfortable during that 2015 draft to be like, oh, if you pass on Marner, he's going to kill you for the rest of your life. Whatever, all that, parents talk. But you see that on his face, and then you watch some of the plays that were made in the series, and you're like, I don't know, man. It's one where if I'm a Leafs fan, I'm just tired of it. I'm just like, you got to change something to change it, because what this is ain't working. It's crazy to think that Matthews has been in the league for this was his 9th season, which ages all of us tremendously to hear that. And it's 9 years in the league, and this is as far as they've gotten. Game 7 in the second round is the furthest they've gotten in the playoffs, because Florida bumped them off 2 years ago in 5 games. Getting this far and having run it back with the same core for 7 years, when they signed Tavares 7 years, which again, throw me in the grave, man. But 7 years with this crew is incredible, and not changing up anything other than the support pieces. Even Morgan Riley's been there the whole time too. So that's 4 or 5 guys that are your leaders that haven't gotten it done. And every year you're like, nope, got to run it back. You change GMs, nope, we're sticking with it. Those are our guys. Which, hey, kudos for sticking to your guns, but
I mean, sometimes you stick to them too much, you shoot yourself in the foot, and I think they've been doing that the last 3 years here.
Joe Yuran, Bleacher Report on the NHL. He was in Toronto for games 5 and 7 of that series. So what do you make? Marner's going to get $14 million a year, whatever. Someone's going to pay him. And I wonder, this reputation that that core group has acquired. I'm living in a market where the best players on the Sabres who can't seem to handle pressure or collectively lift the team out of this playoff drought go on to greener pastures and win cups and MVPs and just all of it, right? The list is getting pretty long, and who knows, maybe it'll grow in this spring here now that we're down to the conference finals. I feel like Marner, I would not tag him with he can't do it, because collectively the group didn't work. But we've seen here that collectively a group can't work, but individuals can fly and be free and go do something remarkable. So I wonder if Marner is someone who can accomplish that once he gets out of the cauldron that is Toronto.
Yeah, and the crazy part is the way we talk about him sometimes. We talk about him as he's a contributor. I mean, everybody focuses on Matthews. I get it. But, Marner's been a top 10 NHL scorer for, 5-6 years now?
Right, 100-point guy, yeah.
All right, 100-point guy, a top scorer, a really good defender. I mean, he's not knocking guys through the boards, that's for sure, but he's fast, he's good with the stick, he's good at, marking guys up on the ice. He's a really darn good player, and it's crazy the way we talk about him. But when it comes to July 1st, everybody's attention is going to be fixed on him. Not just because the Leafs fact. Well, it is partially that, but there hasn't been a guy that big in free agency at his age to hit the free market. And I am probably forgetting guys here, but it feels like it's been a while. Maybe Stamkos, I don't know, but
he didn't get to the market in the end. He signed hours before the market opened and stayed in Tampa.
Yeah, well, that was they had
you mean this most recent time around when they didn't pick him up and he went to Nashville, but a few years ago, right?
No, I'm talking when you mean where they had the interview process,
right?
In days in advance, and he was touring all over the place talking with people. But this is, he's a monstrously important player and a guy who wherever he goes is going to give them a lift. Now, you'd like to think that everybody should be calling him, but the price tag is going to be obscene. And, I don't know if this is going to be like a Rantanen type deal where, it's a lot of talk leading up and then maybe it takes a little bit less to go to a team where it's going to be fine. Although I guess Rantanen took the offer that Colorado made to him in Dallas instead. So whatever, but this is a guy where, if it's Detroit, if it's Seattle, I'm sure I know a lot of Sabres fans are dreaming that he'll come here. I don't know that ownership's eager to pay $14 million a year to a guy when you got your other guys here, but who knows? But there are so many teams where you're like, man, he'd be a great fit. Blank, and you fill in the team, and you start immediately drawing up lines and thinking oh man, they'd be a lot of fun if they had him. And I'm sure those teams are all very aware of who they are if they've got a deal worked out. But he's a tremendous player. But you get looking at the crunch time games and the playoff games, and there's a couple of years where he had good playoffs, but the team couldn't get it done. So what does it matter?
Right.
It's just he did great, but who cares? It's like Nylander last year, 2 years ago, great playoffs. Did anybody? No, they didn't win. Who cares?
Right. Joe, what do you think about the setup here for the two series here in the East and the West?
But it's funny. We just got done talking about Toronto and how we've been waiting for them to get over the hump. Isn't that the Dallas Stars now?
Yep.
3 straight years in the Western Final. They're playing Edmonton again there. Edmonton, I can't figure them out because I watched the way Stuart Skinner started the playoffs against LA, and you're like, oh boy, they're toast. And Pickard comes in and closes it down, and now Skinner's back in and playing well, and you're like, how do you do it? How does it keep working out this way? But Dallas got through all of this without Robertson, without Heiskanen, and now they're both back, and they played great hockey. I know those series went long, but they looked menacing, and they handled Winnipeg really well. That first round series of Colorado was an all-timer. Like that's it. The problem in the West is that if you're a really good team, you've probably got a really hard road to even get to the conference final, and both of these teams had. I think Edmonton was fortunate. Vegas seemed to run out of gas, and Jack was trying to drag everybody with him, and everybody else just didn't have it. And it's terrifying to deal with McDavid and Draisaitl, and maybe they get Ekholm back, and then you're like, well, they had a weakness, and now it's gone.
Yeah.
It's playoffs aren't fair; they're not meant to be fair. But I mean, geez, if Dallas doesn't get to the Cup final this year, there's not drastic changes to be made, but you're just like, man, like what's it going to take?
What else do they got to do, right? I mean, they made the Rantanen trade. I mean, that is such a significant piece to add at the deadline. I mean, it's a massive, and then and he's locked in now for long term too. So, I don't know. I mean, it's hard to bet against McDavid and Draisaitl, but I feel like Dallas is the team to beat.
Yeah, no, I'm 100% there with you. I think if Florida didn't just have a knockdown drag out with Toronto, and it's still kind of wondering if they're okay, because the way they ended the year was so bad, it's still clouded my vision on them.
Yeah.
And Carolina, that's another team I cannot figure out for the life of me. Absolutely do not know what the heck to think of them. Like, they seem like they're really good, but also I look up and down the roster and I'm like, I don't know, man. You keep waiting for Freddie Anderson to fall apart, all that kind of stuff. But to me, if it's Dallas in the final, Dallas is winning it.
Joe, I appreciate the time very much. Love that you got up to Toronto for those two games. And let's make sure we touch base before the marketplace opens in the summertime here. We got about 6 weeks or so. So
absolutely.
All right, man.
Well, we should have a lot. We should have a lot to discuss Buffalo-wise, I hope, in some way. I know nobody here is excited about the draft, but that's going to be the start of the really interesting times.
All right, Joe. Thanks again, man. Appreciate it very much. Keep up the good work.
Thanks, Bulldog. Good to talk to you.
Joe Yuran, you catch him at Bleacher Report on the NHL. Great stuff on these two games in Toronto, Game 5 and Game 7. Go seek him out, find him. Maybe you got to go to Blue Sky to find him. I'm not sure if he's still posting all of his work up on X or not. But good job by Joe. We'll hit up a timeout here, 803-0550. Marner. Look, if and if is a Herculean effort, if is putting in. If you could get him, would you want him? 803-0550. For the Sabres, I mean. That's the if. That's, again, it's heavy. 803-0550 is the number. I'll lay out the case for when we get back, because I don't think the Sabres are in a position to say no to anything at this point. I don't think it's that realistic, but that's why the if is there in big, bold, orange font. We'll talk about that as we go here. 803-0550 is the number. Mike is off today along with Zach Jones on the Bulldog, and this is WGR.
Playoff action is taking a pause in the NBA and NHL as we now get ready for the conference finals. They will, though, begin tomorrow. We'll start with hockey as it'll be Florida versus Carolina in the East and Dallas versus Edmonton out west. Dallas-Edmonton will get started on Wednesday. And 3 of the 4 teams that are left alive in the Stanley Cup playoffs were in the conference finals last year, Carolina being the only new team as they take the Rangers spot. We're going to get more hockey as Paul Hamilton will join the show in just about a half hour at 5. Well, in the NBA in the East, it's Indiana versus the Knicks. They're going to begin Wednesday, while out west, they start tomorrow. It's Minnesota and OKC. Minnesota and Indiana, they've never won an NBA title in their franchise's history. The Knicks last won one in 1973. And the Thunder, they've never won one as the Oklahoma City Thunder, but did win a title as the Seattle Supersonics all the way back in 1979. The Philadelphia Eagles officially announced a multi-year contract extension for head coach Nick Sirianni following their Super Bowl win this past year, and the Eagles are reportedly also bringing in former Jets general manager Joe Douglas to be part of their front office. Douglas was part of the Eagles front office from 2016 to 2019. And then over in golf, Scottie Scheffler gets his 3rd career major on Sunday. He takes home the PGA Championship, and we'll get more on this when Brian Kosil joins the show at 6. That's your Paddock Chevrolet Sports Headlines. Paddock Chevrolet celebrating 90 years of being your hometown dealership. I'm Zach Jones for WGR Sports Radio 550.
Felt like we were ready to play. Felt like we were in a good mindset. Like I said, I thought the first 10 minutes, they came out strong, and the next 10 minutes I thought we controlled play. And then I just thought we had too many passengers throughout the rest of the game and just weren't on the same page. And they get a couple goals and momentum like that, and then you're chasing the game, and it's hard to get it back. When you're down 3 against a good team that plays sound defensively like them.
Leafs captain Austin Matthews offering his observations last night after yet another bitter disappointment in a Game 7 for the Leafs. Brad Marchand, by the way, 5-0 in Game 7s against Toronto in his career. Now, that's incredible. Maybe even more incredible than that Leafs core now, because we've seen teams through the years that just can't get, somehow they're fatally flawed some way, somehow, and they just cannot get it together. However much talent, however much regular season success, they just can't get through the gauntlet that can be the Stanley Cup playoffs. Marchand 5-0 in these games against Toronto is just a remarkable stat. And, of course, he's on Florida now after all those years in Boston. Glad to have you with us here on a Monday. I am the Bulldog. Mike is off today. He'll be back with the show tomorrow. Zach Jones along as well. I mentioned so much talk surrounding the Leafs and what will happen now that most notably Mitch Marner, John Tavares too, are unrestricted free agents, will be unrestricted free agents. And I don't think I have it in me, nor do I think the audience has it in them to legitimately talk about whether signing Mitch Marner is a good idea for hours on end. And I don't think it's something I can build an entire show about, because it just seems so far removed from reality that they would be a contender for his services, that he would even take their call. I think there's going to be a lot of interest in him on the open market. And I do think, with that said, and I've gotten a little of this on social media today, because I posed this question: if doing some heavy lifting, if Marner were interested in the Sabres, would you want to give him a max contract? Would you want to do that? And I think the reason it's even a question worth asking, without just an easy knee-jerk yes for an answer, is his reputation. What he's just been through with the Toronto Maple Leafs. I mean, I've got a team here that can't even get to the playoffs, let alone succeed when they get there. And you want to go add at a $14 million salary a guy whose reputation is not being able to perform at least at the level you're used to seeing in the regular season. He's a superstar who cannot come through in the playoffs. That is the scarlet letter he's wearing until he proves otherwise. The reason I would say yes and not even really hesitate about it is because you get guys in the league. I mentioned this with Joe Yurden last segment. Look at the Sabres and the reputation certain guys would have had. Now, I recognize like the team's reputation sort of feeds into that, but Ryan O'Reilly got sad and didn't love playing anymore, and so he's got to go, and he goes and wins the Cup and is the Conn Smythe MVP in the playoffs that year. Like a year removed from being traded by the Sabres, he's hoisting the Cup and winning the MVP for playoff performance. Sam Reinhart was a very good player, probably vastly underappreciated by Sabres fans, some of them, when he was here, and he's gone on to become one of the most prolific goal scorers in the current league right now with Florida. Eichel has won the Cup. Eichel wins the Cup. You've got Brandon Montour. Like all these guys. And there's even, dare I even say, bring up Kulikov, Labushkin. Like you've got guys playing, roles. They're not the drivers of the team, but guys that we were pretty sure couldn't play, who are holding down minutes on teams that are still playing in the conference finals now. And it's not just the A-list guys that I mentioned. I mean, Reinhardt's the only one of those that's really still alive now, given where we're at, unless you want to count Jeff Skinner with Edmonton, but he's kind of been in and out of the lineup. Anyway, what I think you learn from your experience being a Sabres fan is that a talented guy, and Marner's as talented, if not more talented, than any of the guys I've mentioned here. I mean, he's a 100-point player. He's more. Why am I even disclaiming it? He's more talented than any of those guys. And yes, he's not come through with the Leafs. I would not assume that he's like some fatally flawed human or some fatally flawed hockey player or fatally flawed competitor, that he can't be a piece of a team that goes far and even wins. Because most of the guys, like Jack was a sad, spoiled brat, and then he went and he fit in Vegas and they win the Cup. You've seen it happen. So it's not exactly apples and apples because, again, the organization, the Sabres, I think plenty of fans blame the Sabres for those guys not coming through. And then once they got out from under it, they flew and were free and they went and won. I just wouldn't rule that out with Marner. And furthermore, like that's the case to not worry about what I guess you might consider his playoff baggage. That's a reason not to worry about it. The other reason why I would hurry to a yes, if Marner would even take their call, beggars, choosers, all right? Where am I? And who am I to go, that's not the kind of player I need. He's not gritty enough. He's not mean enough. He's not tough enough. He scores 100 points. Plop a 100-point scorer on any one of these Sabres teams. Assuming you're going to probably have to move some stuff around, but if there's a team that A, can afford it, and B, needs it, it's this team. That's not to say I don't want to win a championship, and I don't care if a guy can not seem to come through when his team needs him the most. I'm telling you this. You can sign Mitch Marner to $14 million. You can show up on your team and score 100 points, and you make the playoffs. That's a win. You've won. It's 14 years. So any sort of... I respect opinions, and Marner's reputation for being a letdown in the playoffs is well earned. Like, he deserves the criticism. I'm just telling you, I would not cling to it as I'm the Buffalo Sabres, and I'm going to say, you're not big enough. You need to cross-check someone in the face. You need to injure someone like Brad Marchand does. You're not gritty enough. Like, I'm sorry. Like, I cannot myself get to a point where I would believe that and say it. So I think it's a ridiculously far-fetched idea because any number of a half a dozen or more teams will be vying for Marner's services, and we'll see whether he takes the biggest check he can get or that's balanced in some way against an opportunity to join a winner and maybe leave a couple million a year in AAV on the table or whatever it takes. All I'm saying is if his agent wanted to talk to the Sabres, I would be elbowing people in the nuts to get to the phone. You just do not have a situation here where the best free agent to hit the market in maybe a generation is someone that, yeah, that's not a good fit. I mean, eventually I could regret that, right, when he helps make the Sabres into a team that loses in the second round every year. But, I'll take that as progress. Thank you. So sign me up for a yes for the wildly hypothetical, least likely thing I've ever talked about for 5 minutes on the radio to happen. I'm a yes. There. Has that been properly positioned so I don't sound like a crazy person saying, oh, of course you can sign Mitch Marner. You're an NHL team and you've got money. Go do it. When people get excited about him, I just usually go, yeah, no, the Sabres are barely in the league the way a player like him would look at it. So I don't think you have a chance in hell of making it happen. But if for some reason they wanted that, man, I 100%. I'll even allow for 110, even though it doesn't exist. Beggars, choosers. Mike Schopp is off today. 803-0550 is the number. Those didn't flow in the right order. Anyway, Mike's off. Zach's here. I'm the Bulldog. Paul's coming up at 5. Man, I'll bet he hates Mitch Marner. I shouldn't do that. We'll talk to Paul. We'll find out what Paul really thinks about Mitch Marner. But I'm saying right now, knowing Paul for 30 years, I'll bet he hates him. Paul can defend himself. It'll be fine. I'll give him plenty of time. That's coming up at the top of the hour. Brian Kosil on the PGA coming up at 6 as well. Scotty Scheffler wins the third major. So we'll cover all that too as we go. I'm the Bulldog, and this is WGR. because I'm battling through adversity, but I just want to complain to you about how hard my day has been. But you don't have to give me. I want extra credit for my phone went just sort of. This happened. If you're an Apple person, maybe this happens to you. Because the person at the store told me that this is happening with these iPhone 13s. Sometime yesterday afternoon, my phone stopped being a phone. It was like Wi-Fi. I could still text with other Apple people. Like, for instance, Brian Kosil, who'll be on with me at 6 to talk about the golf, and Mike and myself had a thread from the morning about the golf because we have the golf bet, the three of us, and Mike had picked, and he won on Scheffler. And so when the majors are happening, we'll be texting one another. And at some point, Brian, it must be, I hope he doesn't mind me divulging this, an Apple dude. So I was still getting messages from and able to send and receive messages from Brian, but not Mike. And at one point, I realized this was happening, and I texted Brian and said, hey, like, just so no one thinks I'm being a jerk, I'm not responding to the text thread. I can't. My phone died. It just died. Didn't die. It was, I don't know, severely wounded. Anyway, I'm just here to say that the store, I had to go to the store, and that was as quick as I could ever have hoped for. That was very smooth. I can remember the phone before this phone I dropped in a puddle in the park and had to go, like, it was irretrievably shot. And I went, and that took, I left and came to work and went back, and it still wasn't done. Now, I don't know, maybe the puddle impacted that, but I think all the stuff was there. Just you couldn't get the screen to really work. But anyway, they eventually transferred everything, and it was fine. This was like half an hour. Pretty great. But there's like some stuff. Like it won't let me into the work email, and like the hoops I got to jump through to do that. Like functionally, like it's not lining up. I can't do it. Facebook is telling me someone's trying to use your login information on my Facebook account on my iPad is telling me, and it's like, yeah, it's me. Can you put an option on the screen for me to say, yeah, it's actually me. Allow it. No, you're just warning me that someone's trying to. Like, I appreciate you being vigilant against potential hackers, but I'd also like to be able to access the account from my new device, but it won't let me. So I don't know. We'll have to figure all that out. But I've been very distracted. I had to a few different things. For example, we four of us are on this account, right? Our two sons, my wife, and myself. For some reason, when the new phone brought everything over, I got, the wallet where you keep like airplane boarding passes and concert tickets and sporting event tickets. I got like 5 years worth of Owens stuff. Like, I looked in my wallet because I have concert tickets for something coming up at the end of May. I'm like, I want to make sure they're there. Like, yeah, they're there. Why is there a boarding pass from 2021 in here? And there was no quick and easy way to delete that. I had to just click up in the right, remove pass. Remove pass? Yes. Click up in the right, remove pass. That's what I'm dealing with today. Just so you know, I mean, the adversity has been significant.
You're battling.
I've battled. I don't know. I'm playoff tested like Mitch Marner isn't, but I've been battling. I've been going through it today. But I am here to talk to Paul Hamilton and find out how much, if indeed, he hates Mitch Marner. I don't know if he does, but we're going to find out. I have an inkling that he does. So stay tuned. Paul on the Leafs, and we'll get into the Amherst, too. I meant to do that with Joe Yurden last hour, but we ran out of time. But Paul's been covering the Amherst playoff games. They won on Friday to even that series. So we'll get into that with Paul, too, as we go. I'm the Bulldog. Mike is off today. This is WGR.
We are on to the conference finals in the Stanley Cup and NBA playoffs. No games today. They'll all get going tomorrow. Toronto, they fell in 7 to Florida last night, so now out east it is going to be Florida versus Carolina. That series does start tomorrow, while out west, Dallas versus Edmonton is going to begin on Wednesday. And a note on these playoffs, 3 of the 4 teams were in the conference finals last year. Carolina being the only new team, they take the Rangers spot from last year. We'll get more on hockey as Paul Hamilton joins the show next. In the NBA, in the East, it is Indiana versus Knicks, bringing us all the way back to the 1990s, that famous rivalry, Reggie Miller, Patrick Ewing. Now it is Tyrese Halliburton versus Jalen Brunson. That's going to begin on Wednesday. And then out west, it is Minnesota OKC. That starts tomorrow. Minnesota and Indiana, they've never won an NBA title in their franchise's history. The Knicks last won one in 1973. And the Thunder, they've never won one as the Oklahoma City Thunder, but did win a title as the Seattle Supersonics all the way back in 1979. Some other playoff action from the weekend. The Bandits dropped Game 2 to the Rush. We'll now have to wait until Saturday for the series deciding Game 3. That game will be here in Buffalo and right here on WGR. To the NFL, the Philadelphia Eagles have officially announced a multi-year contract extension for head coach Nick Sirianni following the team's Super Bowl win last year. The Eagles, they're also bringing in former Jets general manager Joe Douglas to be a part of their front office. And the 49ers, officially just a few minutes ago, are locking in another player to an extension following Brock Purdy and George Kittle as they sign All-Pro linebacker Fred Warner to a 3-year, $63 million extension. $56 million is guaranteed, making him the highest-paid linebacker in the NFL. It's your Paddock Chevrolet Sports Update. Paddock Chevrolet celebrating 90 years of being your hometown dealership. I'm Zach Jones for WGR Sports Radio 550.
It's been a minute since we talked to the mighty Paul Hamilton on the West-Her hotline, or really any hotline for that matter, but here, of course, it is always the West-Her hotline. Glad to have you with us here on a Monday, and Paul Hamilton joins me now live on said West-Her hotline. Paul, what's shaking, man? How are you?
Willis Reed, Walt Frazier, Dave DeBuscher, Bill Bradley, and Dean Meminger.
Paul, are you on another line talking to someone? Like, what would...
Well, I just heard in the sports that the last time the New York Knicks won the championship was 1973.
Okay. Good job. Yeah, good. I was 8. All right. Yeah. Good deal. All right.
Guys like Walt Frazier and Willis Reed.
Yeah. Been a minute.
Yeah, Dave DeBuscher.
Yeah. No, I remember all of them. I mean, I can't give you chapter and verse on them all, but I
playing against Jerry West.
Yeah. Well, Paul, thanks. Do you hate Mitch Marner?
I don't like the idea. He might be a very nice person. He's a very good offensive hockey player, but he's not what the Buffalo Sabres need. I mean, the Buffalo Sabres were 10th in the league in scoring at 3.23 goals per game. If you got up to 3.26 goals per game, they're 7th in the league in scoring. I mean,
Mitch Marner can do that for him, Paul.
What the problem with the Buffalo Sabres is they're 29th in the league in defense, and they have goaltenders that can't make a big save at a big time for them, and they need players that can jump into your top 6. I have a better idea than Mitch Marner. How about Sam Bennett or Marchand, who have won cups, who can play in your top 6, who can play offensively and defensively, can upset the other team. They will get the other team upset instead of the Sabres having to react. Other teams will have to react to the Sabres. That's the types of players that they need, and they're winners. You know, they're winners. They can play both ends of the ice. They're tough to play against. They score goals in big games. You know, they're leaders. I mean, And people, well, they're not coming to Buffalo. Well, is Mitch Marner coming to Buffalo?
Yeah, of course. This entire conversation requires a certain level of suspension of disbelief. That like maybe the gyrations aren't even worth the time. But whatever. Here's the thing about I don't disagree with you about Bennett or Marchand even at this stage. The thing is, I think everyone agrees. Marner is, Paul. I'm trying to get through a day here. Marner. Marner, like, people are, I think, going to overreact to Marner. A part of my thinking is a player that looks flawed in one place, and I recognize Toronto is not Buffalo, okay, so it's not exactly apples and apples, but you've seen guys who acquired reputations for sulking and not being able to pull it together, even though they had a very talented roster and all these different things. They go elsewhere and they fly and they're free. I'm not predicting for sure that will happen with Mitch Marner, but to me, getting out from under Toronto and all the expectations could be extremely good for him. And as far as his, one-sided type player, he was a Selke Trophy finalist 2 years ago. And he plays on the penalty kill. This is not just a one-dimensional player entirely.
I disagree. I think he is a one-dimensional player. I think he makes them worse defensively, not better. They'll probably be 30th or whatever defensively. Especially watching him in the playoffs, some of the things he's done defensively in the playoffs, I'm shaking my head. What are you doing? You're just wandering around. You're not even paying attention. I've said that out loud as I'm watching him. It's like, what in the world are you doing? And so, to me, I don't care if he was a Selke Trophy candidate or whatever.
It's not whatever. It's the best defensive forward in hockey. Now, he didn't win it, but to be nominated, was everybody sniffing glue that year? I don't understand why.
By what? The Canadian media? Or, I just...
Okay.
I'm not on board with it. I'm just not.
All right.
And I think they become a worse defensive team on a team that has to be better defensively. All right, so he shows up, and instead of being 10th in the league in scoring, you're 7th in the league in scoring or 6th in the league in scoring. Great. Now what? I still don't have a goalie that can make a save. I still don't have a team that plays well defensively, and I've just sunk $12-13 million into that.
Oh, keep going. 14, 15, whatever the max is what it would cost anyway. Paul, can I interest you in a bunch of 6-5 wins? That's what I'm after, right?
Yeah. I would rather go with the established winning players that can also score goals. Maybe can't get 100 points, but allows me to put Zach Benson in Rochester and put a very decent hockey player into my top 6 that is going to be good offensively and good defensively and can score the big goal at the big time and have been winners and are abrasive to play against. And I would just rather have that player. I think that's the player the Sabres need a lot more than just, and I'm just going to say it, a one-dimensional offensive type guy.
Well, I love that you have chosen to not respect the Selke Trophy finalist thing, because it certainly helps your argument and hurts mine. But, I don't know. The fact that he plays on the penalty kill and was nominated for that, to me, flies in the face of the reputation.
They don't have anybody else to play in the penalty kill. They got all offensive forwards.
Are you kidding me? Pontius Holmberg can't kill penalties?
Well, yeah.
Jan Kruk or whoever these people are? What are you talking about?
They did change it around this year. They did change around this year. They were better defensively this year as a team. That game against Buffalo here in Buffalo, did the Sabres even have a scoring chance all night? They just shut it down and got great goaltending. So, yeah, they were better defensively this year, definitely. But at the end of the day, when they needed to be good defensively, in a Game 7, they certainly weren't.
Holy cow. Paul, we can table the Marner thing is going to be there. That is going to be evergreen until July 1st when he signs, with Tampa or whatever's going to happen, wherever he ends up going. Really, though, one last thing. The point to me is, the way I phrased it to begin with, because I don't think any of these people are going to be interested in signing with the Buffalo Sabres, like any of the names you mentioned here, Bennett and Marchand, who, again, I'll say it again just in case anyone didn't catch it. I'm sure you did. I agree with you. That style of player is certainly in line with what I need. I'm just saying, if Marner actually wanted to talk to me, I'm not hanging up the phone. Like, I'm not going to feel too proud to take that call and consider signing him, despite him not being the best fit, because I need to do something to change the narrative around this team, and he's someone that I think could certainly do that. Anyway, Paul, games 5 and 7 in Toronto. Have you? Mike said it great after Game 5 on Thursday, and here he said, it's got to be the worst sporting event you've ever attended if you were there. And I would agree. And then maybe last night only trumps it because you got the Game 6 to give you hope again, and then here comes Game 7, and it's really. I've never seen a team after the handshakes when a series is over gather at center ice to salute the fans and get booed. I mean, that was brutal. I'm not saying they didn't deserve it. I mean, those 2 games, Paul, I just can't even explain it.
And the thing about it is, it's not just this year. I mean, it keeps happening over and over and over and over again. And that's, I think, what makes it even worse, that you've got guys that perform very well in the regular. I mean, Austin Matthews is one of the best goal scorers in the National Hockey League in the regular season. And then he gets to the playoffs, and where is he? We need a goal. It's Game 5. It's Game 7. Where is he? Where are all these guys?
Mm-hmm.
That are very, very good in the regular season. And as we said, they were a better defensive team this year. Thinking, okay, we've made ourselves better defensively. We have a goaltender that's playing very, very well for us. Unfortunately, that goaltender got hurt, but Woll wound up with a shutout along the way, and I don't think he was as good as Stolarz was, but I'm not sure Stolarz would have changed this around. We don't know. We'll never know. But that's the thing. I think that's what makes it worse, is it just keeps happening over and over and over again. And if you're the Toronto Maple Leafs trying to figure out what are you going to do, what makes you think sticking with it is going to make it change all of a sudden?
So what do you think moving forward here? Not for the Leafs entirely. I mean, I think their decisions will be largely made for them by guys hitting the market, though I guess maybe Tavares might want to stay, and they'll have a choice to make there if they want to keep going down that road. Really will depend on whether they can attract one of the players you've mentioned here, because Sam Bennett seems like a perfect ready-made replacement for Tavares on the free agent market. Should he get to the market, we'll see how that all shakes out. But we've got Florida and Carolina in the East, Dallas and Edmonton in the West. 3 of the 4 from last year. Only the Rangers were in the Carolina spot last year. What do you think of the field left?
It's interesting that in the NHL, the overall placement of these teams, you got Team 5 in Dallas, Team 9 in Edmonton, Team 10 in Carolina, and Team 11 in Florida. And even in the NBA, you do have Team 1 in Oklahoma City, but then you got to go down to Team 5 with the Knicks, Team 6 with Indiana, and Team 10 with Minnesota. So you in both leagues, the higher seeds for the most part, other than in Oklahoma City and in Dallas, if you want it, it just goes to show you, and Tampa did the same thing. Tampa didn't care if they won the division. They didn't care if they won the President's Trophy or any of that kind of stuff. It's like, let's get ready for the playoffs. That's what the regular season. For those teams, it's an 82-game preseason. It's like, let's make sure we get in the playoffs, but we don't care where we get in. Let's just play, And Florida's 11th. Are they the 11th best team in the National Hockey League? No. But that's the way they hung out, and that's what Tampa did for those years, too. They just hung out, made the playoffs. They didn't care. It doesn't really matter if you're home ice or not. I mean, the road team wins quite a bit in the playoffs, and I think that's what we're seeing now is teams, good teams are just like, yeah, that's nice to win the President's Trophy. Congratulations. We don't care. We want to hang the big banner up there, and we're going to get ready to play for that big banner, and I think that's what we're seeing now. As far as Carolina, I feel like Jacques Lemaire has re-entered the league. I probably would rather do chores in the backyard than watch Carolina play.
I hated every minute of that Washington-Carolina series that I watched. I even would say, like, Owen would be in the kitchen, grabbing something to drink or whatever. I'd be like, I hate watching these teams play. This is terrible.
And I understand, and people are right. Well, they win. They haven't won the cup yet, but they're in the top 4.
Yeah.
So it's working for them to play this way. It worked for the New Jersey Devils as Jacques Lemaire systematically ruined the National Hockey League by winning a couple of Stanley Cups that way and then making other teams think, well, we got to play that way. No, we don't have to play that way. Why don't we just play some hockey that we actually can enjoy instead of playing that way? And Carolina plays that way, and if they happen to win the Stanley Cup, then all of a sudden, here we go. We're going right back to Jacques Lemaire and the Devils. Fire Lindy Ruff and get Jacques Lemaire in here and hire Lou Lamoriello, and here we go. And it's just I just do not enjoy watching Carolina play at all.
Paul, that's coming across. Paul Hamilton on the Western Hotline here for a few more minutes. How do you feel about the Amherst at this point, Paul? 1-1, and what are we, Wednesday, Friday again?
Yeah, Wednesday, Friday, Sunday if necessary.
All in Laval, yeah.
I know fans are going to say stop making excuses for them, but watching Game 1, I got just what I expected. The Amherst hadn't played in 13 days. Levi's leaving rebounds out in the slot, and they're not good defensively. It's a 5-4 game. It's just not Amherst hockey. I mean, they just had to get themselves back into playoff form and back going again. And by Game 2, it was back. They played very well. Even in the first period, they limited opportunities for Laval, played very, very well. I mean, Laval had 7 shots in the first period. I think 3 of them came in the last 30 seconds. I think they had 4 before that. By the end of the day, Levi only had to look at 19 shots. Even though he gave up 3, there were tips and things like that. I don't think really you would have blamed him on any of the goals. He played well. I mean, he was back to being what we had seen him throughout the season, and the Amherst were back playing the way they're very capable. And let's face it, I mean, Laval had the best record in the American Hockey League. You're not going to win 3 straight games there. They had to win that game at home, Game 2, and they did a great job. You watch the 4 goals that they scored, all guys going to the net, multiple guys at the net, guys like Isak Rosen. I mean, he's on the wall. He wins 3 battles going to the net and then just keeps the puck alive in the crease. He just sticks his stick in there and keeps it alive so Rusick can tap it into the net. And there's Rusick at the net too. And it's just like that's what you want to see, what is Roseanne, about 175 pounds soaking wet, but he's up against a 200-pound guy winning battles all the way to the net, and that's the way they scored their goals, and that's the way they play. Mike Leone has that team playing very, very well, and now it just becomes a best 2 out of 3. Unfortunately for the Amherst, all 3. Well, maybe not unfortunately, because the Amherst are one of the better road teams in the American Hockey League. So they're comfortable playing on the road. So maybe it's not that big of a deal for them to have to go there and win 2 out of 3 games.
How much, like Laval, the season series, we had Kevin Aklubja on Friday, Paul, and he mentioned the season series had been very heavily in favor of Laval. Mm-hmm. And I wondered, and I think I brought this up with you last week when we started to have an idea about what the field looked like and who they might be matching up with here, whether physically they would be able to handle it. And is there somewhat of a mismatch there between these 2 teams, or is it not that pronounced?
No, they're a bigger team, and they're not as goony and rough and tough as Syracuse is. That was a good start for Rochester to play them, because it's just a goon squad. I mean, it looks you think like you're watching some version of Slapshot watching them, and the Amherst stood up. The Amherst basically said, "Go ahead, you guys hit us in the back of the head and take us head first into the wall. We'll score on the power play, and we'll beat you in 3 games, and you guys can then go home." And that's basically what happened. Syracuse didn't stop playing like that. Rochester couldn't have cared less. And they played their game, and they won in 3 games. And that's what I saw in Game 2. And Game 1. They didn't back down in Game 1. But Game 2 also. It's not – Laval isn't – they're big, and they'll slap you around a little bit, but they're not like Syracuse. And, the Amherst are fine with it. They stood up to it. As I said, they're right in there with the scrums. They're not backing down to anything. They're at the net, which got them 4 goals, and then an empty netter because they're at the net. They don't care if you get cross-checked or whatever. It's like, fine. You do what you have to do, we'll do what we have to do, and we'll let our skill take over.
Did you enjoy the Subway Series, Paul?
Yes, I actually was taping the game yesterday so I could watch it after the hockey game. So I didn't know that Bellinger had hit a grand slam till like 1:30 in the morning when I was sitting there watching it. So it was, that was fun to see. That would be a great World Series.
What impressive! You avoided the result of your favorite baseball team's game until 11:30 at night. That's incredible.
Well, I just stay off Twitter. I don't need to be on Twitter as I'm watching a hockey game. So.
But what about all my witty observations, Paul?
Well, I catch up eventually, but I got to be done with the baseball game before I can start catching up. I do that. I do that sometimes with Bills games. I've actually been on the road when a Bills game has started and basically have been able to avoid the result till I get home that night and can watch the game and have no idea what happened in the game. It's not easy to do, especially with our guys around you that are interested in the game.
Right.
But I have pulled that off before to be able to do that. And sometimes I hate commercials. So sometimes on a Sunday, like a road game starts at 1 o'clock, I'll go shopping. Go get groceries or whatever, and then, I'm DVRing the game, and when I get home about, 2:15, 2:30, I kick off. And then I can fast forward through commercials and everything. And basically, by the time I'm done, I finish the game around the same time everybody else does. But, and again.
Listen to this guy.
I'm not Twitter is not my favorite thing in the world. So staying off Twitter is not a
sure, I get
not
that.
a hard thing for me to do. So especially on a football game like that, I stay off Twitter. And just
I am like you on Bills game days for sure. Like the game starts and I try not to be there because everything is the worst thing that's ever happened. As soon as there's a 3 and out or whatever, and that overreaction, I don't need that in my brain space, generally speaking. So I try to avoid that while the game is on. Obviously,
and, with Bills fans, the Bills have never committed a penalty in the history of the franchise, and that's fine. But to me, the refereeing is just horrendous in the NHL. It's in the NFL, and it's horrendous for everybody. I mean, I can sit there and pick out a lot of penalties that the Bills should have gotten, or a lot of penalties that the Sabres should have gotten. And a lot of penalties that didn't go their way, too. It's horrendous refereeing.
Well,
so I don't need to read about how the Bills got screwed by the referees and all that. No, everybody gets screwed by the referees, not just the Bills. Yeah, the Bills did.
Equal
and so did everybody
screwers.
else.
Yeah, right. Well, I wanted to just squeeze in real quick, Paul, that I did not appreciate the Yankee fans being so rude to Juan Soto. So I'm sure you love that, but I didn't feel like that was very polite.
I think he was genuinely surprised
that they treated him that way.
By that game, by that ESPN game, he was basically just standing out there like a deer in headlights. How he likes to have fun and interact, and he did that in the first game, and it wasn't working. And he started like going out at the last possible second to take his place in the outfield. He'd stay in the dugout. Everybody else is out there warming up, and he's still in the dugout. And just out there, he did not look like he enjoyed it at all out there. And I think he was rather surprised. He got the greeting. I don't know why. I think he was in New York long enough to know how fans react to things out there.
Yeah.
But he, to me, maybe I'm wrong, but just looking at him, he seemed genuinely surprised he was being treated that way.
All right, Paul, thanks a lot for this. I'm sure we'll catch up later in the week with the Amherst playing on Wednesday and on Friday. Be well, buddy.
Thanks. Take care.
That's our Paul Hamilton on the West Her Hotline and his appearances here on WGR, brought to you by Equitable Advisors, planning for your futures about more than just money. Let Equitable be your guide, and by Relax Honda. Relax, we got this. We'll hit up a timeout. 803-0550 is the number. You want to talk a little more about something Paul and I talked about. Mitch Marner isn't a free agent idea. Paul likes other ideas more. I don't think any of it's going to be worth much because I don't think any of them are realistic. Thus is life as a Sabres fan and observer. 803-0550 is the number. The guest train will continue in about a half an hour. Brian Kosil will be with me to pour over the second major of the season, won by Scotty Scheffler yesterday at Quail Hollow outside Charlotte, North Carolina. We'll talk about all that with Brian at 6, but time for your calls between now and then, again, at 803-0550. Mike is off today along with Zach Jones. I'm the Bulldog, and you're listening to WGR.
We are on to the conference finals in the Stanley Cup and NBA playoffs. Toronto fell last night in Game 7 to Florida, so now the East is Florida versus Carolina. That's going to get started tomorrow, while out West it's Dallas versus Edmonton. That's going to begin on Wednesday. And 3 of the 4 teams that are in the conference finals this year were there last year, Carolina being the only new team. They take the Rangers spot from last season. While in the NBA in the East, it is deja vu from the 90s, Indiana versus the Knicks. That series is going to begin on Wednesday. Then out West, it's Minnesota versus OKC. That'll start tomorrow. Minnesota and Indiana, they've never won an NBA title. The Knicks last won in 1973. And the Thunder, they've never won one in Oklahoma City, but they did win a title as the Seattle Supersonics back in 1979. And then some other playoff action over the weekend. The Bandits dropped Game 2 to the Rush. They'll now have to wait until Saturday for the series deciding Game 3. That game will be on Buffalo and can be heard right here on WGR. And then some football news. The Philadelphia Eagles officially announced a multi-year contract extension for head coach Nick Sirianni, coming off of last year's Super Bowl win. And the 49ers locking in another player to an extension following Purdy and Kittle, as All-Pro linebacker Fred Warner signing a 3-year, $63 million extension. $56 million of that is guaranteed, making him the highest-paid linebacker in the league. And then in golf, Scottie Scheffler, he won his 3rd major on Sunday. He takes home the PGA Championship, and we'll get more on that as Brian Kosil will join the show in just about a half hour at 6 o'clock. That's your Paddock Chevrolet Sports Headlines. Paddock Chevrolet celebrating 90 years of being your hometown dealership. I'm Zach Jones for WGR Sports Radio 550.
Well, I'm ready. I was here. I'm sorry. I just needed a second. I found that I don't like how I look without my glasses on. And, I know there's, maybe as many as a dozen people watching this stream. So I feel like I want to have my glasses on. I want to present, but if I put my headphones on before I put my glasses on, it's hard to put my glasses on. And what I did there, the music started playing, and I remember Zach had said a few minutes ago, I actually did remember, no clip, it's not going to be an audio clip, it's just going to be music coming in. So I knew, okay, get ready. I put my headphones on, and have my glasses on, I take my headphones off, but that was the delay. You didn't need to know any of this. Really, I wish I didn't know. I sometimes stuff just comes out. I don't know, I can't explain it. Good to have you with us, though, by the way. I'm the Bulldog. Mike Schopp is off today. He'll be back tomorrow. Zach Jones is here as well. I was just looking, by the way, I was a little distracted because I wanted to look. I think, and I got to confirm this with Mike, I don't look at these odds that often, and nor do I have them memorized. But I feel like for a while as the playoffs were getting going, Carolina had, if it wasn't the most favorable odds to make it to the final, it might have even been to win the cup because the path looked, pretty convenient. And I'll bet some of that, well, it certainly was the matchups, their side of the bracket, Montreal, Washington. As it turned out, of course they had Montreal in the first round, so that was their matchup. They didn't have to draw Washington in round 2, but they did. Oh no, excuse me, I got that wrong. Washington played Montreal. Who did Carolina beat in the first round? I have that open here. Let me. I'm sorry, I'm botching the point.
New Jersey.
New Jersey, right, without Jack Hughes. So easy first 2 rounds. So, if they're likelier to get through than any of the other teams, their odds for, potentially winning the cup are going to be more favorable. Well, now that's changed. They are the last choice on the board. It's close. It's not a huge gap or anything. Florida's the favorite, plus 240. Edmonton has the same, plus 240. Dallas is plus 280, and Carolina plus 300. And I think I think that's right. I think Dallas is the best team left, but we'll see. Edmonton is that's going to be a big challenge. They lost to this team last year in the conference final. They didn't have Rantanen, so we'll see how much of a difference that makes. But I like Dallas. I'm also I'm a Dallas investor. I have one of those ridiculous championship parlays going, and Dallas to win the Cup is, and now I can't for some reason log into my account because I'm a moron. I'm not going to be able to tell you. I know who the teams are. I would have liked to give you all the odds, but it's Dallas to win the Cup, Oklahoma City to win the NBA title. So yesterday and Saturday were good days for me, right? I mean, Dallas wins in 6 against Winnipeg and makes it to this conference final against Edmonton, and I needed Oklahoma City to get past Denver, and they bludgeoned them in Game 7. So they did it, and they get to match up here now with Ant and the Timberwolves, and we'll see what happens in the East here with the Knicks and the Pacers. But I'm alive. I'm halfway home in both the NBA and the NHL championship rounds with those choices, Dallas and Oklahoma City to win. I have those two paired up with the Mets in Major League Baseball, which is why I'm so sensitive to Juan Soto being treated meanly by the Yankee fans, because I'm a big Met fan now. And, of course, the Bills to win the Super Bowl. Those are the 4. And I can't remember if I put 10 or 20 on it, but it's going to pay $37,000 if it comes through. It's obviously it's a super long shot bet, but that's the kind of stuff I love. What I mostly am hoping for, I will consider it money well spent if we get absolutely through these first 2, which, we're a few weeks out from both the NHL and NBA crowning champions. If I get Dallas and Oklahoma City, I am going to be impossible to deal with by the fall, or really all summer, because I will be going over to Howard Simon's house to watch the Mets with him, and be riddled with the anxiety that Howard has been living with, and many other Met fans as well, for all these years, because I will be, for the first time in my life, pretty seriously it's not a lot of money that I'm out if it doesn't happen, but obviously the payoff is massive. So I will have a lot of Mets anxiety, I anticipate, over the summer. Again, if we get there, no rush. Again, halfway there. Each of my teams in the NHL and the NBA have won 2 rounds. They each have 2 rounds to go. So I'm hardly a made man in this area, but still, each step pretty big. So I'm alive, at least. That's all I can ask for today. Josh is first up this segment. Hi, Josh. Thanks for calling. You're on WGR.
This is my favorite station on YouTube. I am so glad and fortunate I found the station. I've been a Sabre fan. I've been a Buffalo sports fan for years. I live in East Coast of Canada, again, in Newfoundland, and bragging about Buffalo sports here. Believe you me, I'm often by myself in high praise. Bulldog, you're right. You do need the glasses. Thank you for putting those on for all of us in the YouTube chat, including myself. Mitch Marner, guys, listen, Mitch Marner, why do we want him here? What we need here, guys, in Buffalo are character guys. We need leaders. We need guys who want to play for the Sabres, enjoy the city, and want to see the drought continue and be part of something special. And I don't know if Mitch Marner, back against the wall, I don't know if he's that type of character guy we're looking for. In addition, Lindy Ruff, love having him back. I do enjoy Adam sticking to his guns. He does have a plan. He anticipated that our young kids, our prospects, would be in the NHL and do what they did in the minors and things like that. It doesn't work that way, and Adams made a miscalculation. But you don't kill the rebuild. It is what it is. We do have some rock stars, but if we added some character guys, some leaders to help the influence there as well, I know this roster is built for success. Don't blow it up, my goodness. I love the program, Bulldog, and the staff. Continue the good work. And everyone in YouTube, listen, continue the cheer. The Bills are looking great. There will be a championship in Buffalo, and I will be at that parade, guys. Have a good night.
All right. Cheers to Newfoundland. All right. I don't know. I can't definitively say that's the first time I fielded a call from Newfoundland or the Maritimes, but I enjoyed it very much. I think it's a lot. This is a part of my initial presentation about the Marner thing. I think it's a lot to assume that he's not a good character guy. And look, Paul can disregard the Canadian media, or however he phrased it, anointing Marner as a Selke Trophy finalist. I happen to respect that he was a Selke Trophy finalist. I don't think they'd throw those around carelessly. So I think he's a more well-rounded player than he gets credit for. There's so much blame to go around that I think he's getting... I'm not saying he hasn't performed the way they need him to when it matters the most. Except for assisting on the go-ahead game-winning goal in Game 6 in a must-win situation. But, other than that, he's earned the skepticism. I get it. My walking off point for this conversation, as ridiculous as it may be because of the Sabres standing, I don't think they're attracting Mitch Marner or Sam Bennett or Brad Marchand or Eric Cernak. I mean, I just think they're going to have a really hard time pulling guys into the boat. For no small reason that the guy whose, vision and rebuild here that our caller from Newfoundland wants to credit Kevin Adams for, put a sign out front of the arena saying no one, our party sucks. Like they got the Simpsons "Our Party Sucks" cake, courtesy of the GM. So, the reputation of the organization is in a very bad spot. And my point about Marner is simply about beggars and choosers and not being so mighty. I don't think Marner's a perfect fit. But if for some reason, I can't think of one other than logistics, which is his family's from around Toronto and Buffalo's close. That's it. All right. And maybe that's all you need. Right. But if he wanted to take your call, if he was interested in entertaining the idea of playing here, I'm so desperate at this point organizationally that even if it's not a perfect fit, I'm going to find a way to make it work. Oh, where am I going to put him? I don't know. I'm going to let J.J. Peterka wander off into one of the Great Lakes. I don't care. I'll do whatever I got to do. Because 100 points versus the 50 or 60 is a big difference. So this idea, to me, I have a feeling Paul and I are going to be butting heads about this all summer until Marner signs, for 7 years and $14 million a year with the LA Kings. We'll be butting heads about this. It'll be the most pointless argument you've ever heard because the chances of him wanting to come here, I think, practically don't exist. Okay, all I'm saying is if that were a mistake, if his agent, Darren Ferris, and Mitch Marner are out there going, man, I've always wanted to play in Buffalo. I love going down there. I love 9/11 Tavern. Like, whatever. I have no idea what could possibly attract. I got to Wings already. It's day one of this. I'm at Wings, okay? And his family lives, 2 hours away. If one of the best players to ever hit free agency wanted to take your call, I am not interested in listening. I guess I'm going to be pretty bullheaded about this, which will be a problem. I'm not interested in listening to an argument about how he doesn't fit. I've not been to the playoffs in 14 years. I will make it fit. I will build you whatever you need built. What do you want? I'll figure it out. You want skates made out of seashells? I'll figure out a way to make that happen for you. Like, I need anything I can get my hands on. So that's it. Sure. Like if I could objectively just look at the market and pick out players that I'm going to land, I don't know that Marner would be at the top of my list either. I like I don't know about Marchand at his age, but the Sam Bennett idea that Paul is liking sounds great to me. And likewise, if he wants to take your call, I'm going to overpay him out the wazoo. Just because he took my call. That's the state of things with the Buffalo Sabres. I don't know. I'm grateful for the call from Newfoundland, but Adams' vision, man, I'm struggling with that. 803-0550 is the number. I'm the Bulldog. This is WGR. Rolling towards the top of the hour. We're going to get Brian Kosil in just a few minutes here for his thoughts on the weekend's action on the links. Second major of the year, PGA Championship, won by Scotty Scheffler. So we'll pour over that with Brian coming up here in about 10 minutes. Real quick, want to mention a promotion that we got going, but it's only for another couple of weeks here. This Odyssey VIP golf card. You've heard the morning show guys, and Jeremy White specifically, doing some longer form spots here with different people who are involved with this, different people who are sponsoring it. Brett Blakely from Encore Golf, Diamond Hawk Golf Course, and others. This card, $129. It's a $328 value, so you're talking about 61% savings, almost $200 in savings, $199 in savings. What you get with the card, 18 holes with a cart at Diamond Hawk Golf Course. You get Golf Dojo indoor golf simulators. You get an hour there. Shamrock Hills Golf Club, which you may remember as Howland Hills, that 18 holes with a golf cart included. Attica's 10th hole in golf course included around there. A dozen Encore. I mentioned Brett from Encore. Encore Golf, a dozen of those balls valued at $40. Bobolink, 18 holes. We're going to go play some par 3 under the lights. A $25 certificate to our buddy Rick Zurak's Golf Warehouse. Destroyer Park Golf as well is included in this. So a lot of varieties there. And maybe some places that like, for instance, myself, I've never played Attica, so I'd be interested in doing that. I've played most of these other places, a time or two of those. It's been a while since I've been to Bobolink. Anyway, the point is, get to WGR550.com and the Get My Perks section of the website and find your way to the Odyssey VIP golf card for 2025. Great value and an opportunity for you to maybe, push yourself outside of the places you normally go because you've got this card, which has a huge discount involved. Again, getmyperks.com is where you can find the details on the WGR VIP golf card. Getmyperks.com. Speaking of golf, the host of Tee to Green, as well as our Sabres pre and post and intermission host, Brian Kosil, will be with me right after this, so do stay tuned. We'll pour over Scotty's big win yesterday at the PGA Championship when we continue. Mike is off today along with Zach Jones. I'm the Bulldog, and you're listening to WGR.
enter the conference finals for both the Stanley Cup and NBA playoffs. In the NHL, in the East, it is Florida versus Carolina. That is going to start tomorrow, while out West, it's Dallas versus Edmonton. That's going to begin on Wednesday. And 3 of the 4 teams who are in the conference finals were there last year, with Carolina being the only new team as they take the Rangers' place from last year. While in the NBA, in the East, it's the 1990s all over again. It's Indiana versus the Knicks. That's going to begin on Wednesday. Then out West, Minnesota versus OKC. That starts tomorrow. And for the NBA, Minnesota and Indiana, they've never won a title. The Knicks last won in 1973, and the Thunder have never won one as the Oklahoma City Thunder, but did win a title as the Seattle Supersonics all the way back in 1979. In the NFL, the Philadelphia Eagles officially announced a multi-year contract extension for head coach Nick Sirianni. This comes after the team won last year's Super Bowl. And the 49ers continue to throw up extensions for current players. Purdy, Kittle, and now All-Pro linebacker Fred Warner. 3 years, $63 million extension, $56 million is guaranteed, and that does make him the highest paid linebacker in the sport. And then Scotty Scheffler, he wins his 3rd major on Sunday. He takes home the PGA Championship, and we'll get more on this as Brian Kosil joins the show next. That's your Paddock Chevrolet Sports Update. Paddock Chevrolet celebrating 90 years of being your hometown dealership. I'm Zach Jones for WGR Sports Radio 550.
It's Mike Schopp and the Bulldog.
Happy, the ball itself has its own energy, or life force, if you will. Its natural environment is in the home. So why don't you send them home?
It's Mike Schopp.
Why didn't you just go home? That's your home! Are you too good for your home? Answer me!
And the Bulldog.
That Happy Gilmore, he's a real crack-up, isn't he? I mean, he's a hoot. You know, what was great today, one of his fans mooned me, and had Happy written on his ass. Ha on the one cheek, and then, sure enough, PPY right there in the other.
It's Mike Schopp and the Bulldog.
Happy learned how to putt. Uh-oh.
On WGR Sports Radio 550.
Super cool of you to choose to hang out with us this afternoon and into the early evening hours here. Welcome to our Brian Kosil, who joins us now on the West Her Hotline. Mike has been off today. I am the Bulldog, along with Zach Jones. And Brian, we thought we were dead, and then maybe we really were dead no matter what, because Rahm was the one who was challenging, and that would have cost us more money, as it turned out. So I guess in the end, I was rooting for Scheffler by the time the thing ended. But it started out like a coronation, and then it got a little rocky, and then we were back to, he's just gliding to the finish here, even bogeying 18, who cares? Quite a Sunday.
It reminded me of kind of how Tiger used to win, right? Like it would be close, and you're like, oh, maybe someone's going to challenge him, and then he would play well, and the others would fizzle, and he all of a sudden is walking up 18 with a 6-shot lead in a major. Scheffler obviously maybe doesn't do it with the flair and the vibe that Tiger did, and I'm not in any way saying Scotty Scheffler is anywhere near what Tiger Woods did, but it reminded me of how Tiger would win a major, how we'd always say, these guys end up collapsing or these guys end up falling back and Tiger pulls away. And that's kind of what happened on the back nine. I mean, it was exciting there for a moment. They go into the back nine and him and Rahm are deadlocked. And then you got DeChambeau, who's right there, and a couple of other golfers within striking distance.
Mm-hmm.
Adam Scott was within a couple of strokes. Noren was within a couple of strokes. And then, it felt like within 4 holes, it felt like it was over again because everybody had gotten back. I know Rahm had to really play aggressive in those final 3 to try to maybe make something up there, and that's really not what you want to do on those final 3 holes anyway. But, for Scheffler, he played his best in the final 9, and now major number 3 for him, and that puts him in some really nice company.
Maybe the biggest shot that contributed to Scheffler being able to pull away a second time like he did was Rahm. Was it 14? Is that the drivable? He hit what looked like a perfect shot, and it was one of those shots that we've all hit them, where you're standing either in the tee box or in the fairway, and you're like, oh, look at this shot. Whoa, that bounce. oh, it just took such a tough, hard right bounce on him into that bunker, and then he kind of botched the bunker shot enough that he left himself a little too much. Because even on the broadcast, I think Immelman was saying, like, this is not a real hard shot. Just get it on the green and let it roll down the hole, and you should be good. But he didn't get it to the green enough. He just caught enough of the fringe that it held up, and it left him, I guess maybe 6 or 7 feet instead of 3.
Yeah, that whole I like the setup that the PGA had there, because you had the really, really challenging finish with 16, 17, 18, but 14 and 15 were definitely gettable. You had 15 to par 5, and then 14 you just mentioned, the drivable par 4, and that was a big swing. I mean, Rahm could not take advantage of it, and Scheffler did. Scheffler went back-to-back birdies on 14 and 15, and that's really where it was over right there. Once he birdied those 2 in a row, and I think the lead ballooned to maybe 5 or 6 at that point, then you knew he was going to be fine. Even though the last 3 were tough, I mean, you knew he could just kind of play it safely on those holes and be fine the rest of the way. Yeah, I mean, for Rahm, I feel like I've been pretty critical in the sense that I think he's been very underwhelming in majors since he's joined LIV for a variety of reasons of whatever LIV does or doesn't get you ready for these strenuous tests of golf over 4 days. Rahm seemed as though, like, when he was on the PGA Tour, like, I thought him and Scotty were essentially toe for toe in terms of what they had been doing and accomplishing. And obviously, since he went to LIV, Rahm has, I think, been really, really disappointing in majors. So to have him there yesterday, I think it's exciting for golf. I think Rahm, even if you don't like him, I still think he's a person that is entertaining to watch. And, in the end, obviously, he couldn't handle it. And that hole that you mentioned, the drivable par 4, was one of the couple of swing holes that definitely went in Scheffler's favor.
Yeah. Can you put into some context what Scheffler, I mean, because you mentioned, and I get why you would, like, you're not comparing him to Tiger, because there's obviously a long way to go here. But what are we talking about? Like, it's only been about 3 years, really, since he's been prominent on the scene, and he's won a lot in those 3 years, right?
Yeah, I mean, it almost seems like he feels like he has more I mean, before yesterday, he only had won the Masters, which seems like not the case because he's been so good. He has won 2 Masters, which obviously is an incredible accomplishment, but it just felt like he had more. Yesterday was number 3. Now, that still puts you in incredible company because he's only 28. So what does Scheffler have now before the age of 28? He's got 15 tour wins and 3 majors. So who has done that? Who's won 15 or more times and has 3 majors at 28 or under? Scheffler's now done that. There's only 2 others. It's Nicklaus and it's Woods. So like that, in perspective of the longevity comparison, that looks really, really good. And, he obviously, Scheffler, he's been dominant, but it's only, like you said, it's only maybe been for about 2.5, 3 seasons tops here. But when you look at what he's done at his age, I don't even know. I feel like Scheffler, he's been here longer. He even just looks older than 28. But right. The fact that he's won 15 times, he's got 3 majors, and only Nicklaus and Woods have done that by age 28, that makes me feel good about maybe where he could go still going forward, realizing he's probably got a dozen prime years of golf still left in him, I would think.
Yeah, some of that is just his style, his demeanor. Like, he seems, I don't know, for some reason, as you were talking there, the phrase old soul came to mind. Like, in an era where, like, there were some obviously Tiger was a huge personality, even if he didn't really let you in. Like, it was just, he was kind of all-consuming, right? Watching him play and just everything around him. But other guys that have, like Rory's that everybody got swept up in that, and that's a long time ago now, I know, 10 years or more since he sort of hit the scene and became a cool story. DeChambeau, Koepka, these big muscly guys that are hitting it in miles. Here's Scheffler. I've joked around that his style on the golf course looks like me with gift cards after my birthday at Marshall's. Like, he's not, he's just not a super flashy guy, but he's obviously ridiculously consistent and excellent, but I think the style stuff might work against him. He's just not someone who, I don't know, grabs you the way some of those other guys might. And really, it's that there isn't pro and con. Like DeChambeau had his fans and his detractors. Koepka, fans and detractors. Tiger, even fans and detractors. The swearing and some of the different stuff, the outbursts and temper. Scheffler is easy to ignore, except that he wins all the time.
No, I think you're right. There's not anything that's really like not likable about Scheffler, but when you sit here and say like you're wowed on TV, when we were watching him, I'm wowed by his accomplishments, but in terms of like being entertained, I feel like it's more of a respect factor with him than you are like when we watched Woods. I mean, even him walking down the fairway, people were like, "This is awesome,"
Right.
Where
yes,
Scheffler, you're right. He just kind of goes about his business. He comes off as just being super like polite and likable, and everybody on the tour seems to have nothing but nice things to say about him. He wins in a soft manner. I actually thought his celebration on 18 was like the most emotion that I feel like I've seen out of him that was anything like Tiger when he slammed his hat down after he won and kind of got excited a little. I mean, that was the most really emotionally you ever see out of Scotty one way or the other. So yeah, he does it in a way that maybe doesn't give him as much credit as he probably should. He's had an outstanding, dominating stretch here for 3 years, and now multiple Masters wins, multiple Players Championship wins, and now a PGA Championship win. So, putting himself in good company, I got to think that he's going to be the favorite here going into the next major at the U.S. Open. So, I think the style is tough to like wrap around. Like, hey, just maybe because he doesn't lack the pizzazz or the character or the personality or even the love-hate that some of the other golf greats have had here over our lifetime, that maybe he should be getting more credit even than what he's getting.
Do you think that last night when he won, I love talking about the broadcast with you because I know you pay a lot of attention. We were texting about something Nance said about Rahm late in the broadcast, and I don't pay close enough attention to know if he says things that are more critical of the live guys or not. But he at one point last night referred to Rahm. Unfortunately, he ended up being roadkill on the Green Mile, and I was like, I texted you like, did you hear Nance just say that? Like, it almost felt to me like Nance had cursed. It was such a strong thing for him to say about a golfer. I thought the end where they did basically what they did with Rory at the Masters, just silently watched the interactions with the family and the friends and the coaches and all the stuff. I think with Rory, that was a cathartic grand slam moment. I don't know. I thought it felt a little awkward and forced that they left Scheffler for that long without talking because it's a major win. It's big, but I don't know. I just felt like it was a little too much of a thing that worked really well at the Masters.
Yeah, and maybe because they did get such rave reviews for how they handled the end of the broadcast, right. Maybe they thought like, hey, let's let that happen again.
Let's do that again, right?
Yeah, that's the only thing I could think of. The comment though that Nance said about Rahm being roadkill, I did think for Nance, who never says anything negative about anybody, like I thought that was a little bit severe and harsh for what he does normally. And Nance, who, by the way, just on his own is a very good golfer. He played D1 golf. Like he is one that is not just a great announcer, but he's appreciative of golf because he knows it, and he knows it well. He was roommates with Freddie Couples, for those that have heard the story, at the University of Houston, a very good golfer, and, was on the team and all that sort of stuff. So, like, he knows good golf when he sees it. And I think, for him to criticize anybody like that in that moment, I don't know if it's live-driven, but announcers definitely, I feel like, have gone out of their way to try to go after the live guys for one way or the other, or even be critical of, they're not showing enough shots. Like at the Masters, Patrick Reed was actually like one shot off the lead there at the end, but you barely saw him up until like the 16th hole. And,
right.
Is that a decision of CBS or the other people that have broadcasting, rights and contract agreements with the PGA Tour? I guess I can't say for sure. The PGA Tour itself doesn't run the Masters and stuff like that. So I'm wondering ultimately maybe if there is a decision of like, hey, we're not going to show the live guys unless we really have to, wink, wink kind of thing. I don't know.
Yeah.
But Nance's comment did seem a little bit off for a spot that he normally is not critical at all. I mean, usually you let the analysts do that, but Trevor Immelman is not really Johnny Miller, where he's going to go out and say something.
Right. Yeah, hardly. Right. More like polar opposite almost, I might say. Hey, before we wrap up, I wanted to thank you for Friday. I know you were tied up with a tennis match, and I hope it went well. Dude, you steering Tim Freeze to us was just fantastic. It probably has been 30 years since I talked to Tim. Like I had barely remembered that I had met him and played golf with him when he was at Transit Valley. I don't know if you heard the segment because you were obviously busy with your tennis match. Man, he just did a great job. So thank you for steering him to us.
No problem. I will say that I did go back and listen to it, and he was excellent. And the energy of Tim being excited about being at that event.
Yeah.
I'm sure you felt it because I could feel it on the replay when I went back and listened to it on the app. He is so energetic and passionate about growing the game of golf, and the fact that he was at the PGA and obviously has a part in the PGA of America's decision-making. I mean, Tim being on the Northeast board and everything. So when I talk with him, when I see him at Glen Oak, when I'm there either doing shows or just having a random conversation, he energizes me. So I'm glad it went well.
Yeah.
He definitely has a love for the game for sure, and Tim is an amazing player. I think he mentioned he's played in senior PGA championships and has tried to make PGA championships. He's the best player that I've played with, and I played around with him at Transit Valley. I remember playing with him, I don't know, a decade ago, and I think I shot, I don't know, maybe like 81. We played the tips with him. I think, I don't know, maybe like an 81. I hope it's not a Kosil brag here. I think I shot maybe like 81, and I was like, wow. I'm like, I felt really good, and Tim was so complimentary the whole time. Brian, you played great. You got to be excited. Can't wait. Meanwhile, Tim shot 67 that day.
Right. I was waiting for that. That's what I expected. Yes.
At the end of it, I remember saying, I'm like, Tim, like, don't you want to like try to play pro here? And he's like, those guys are at least 5 or 10 strokes better than me. And I'm like, damn, like he shot 67 and we barely noticed it, you know.
Yeah, amazing. Well, thanks again for that, Brian, and thanks for this. And onward to the U.S. Open. You're on deck, buddy.
Yep. Looking forward to it at Oakmont. Thanks, Bulldog. Have a good day.
Thanks. That's Brian Kosil on the Western Hotline. We'll hit up a timeout. Get back to the Leafs and another Game 7 disaster. Joe Yuran for Bleacher Report was in attendance for both of these home games. Game 5 on Wednesday, Game 7 last night. We'll pour over all of that with Joe after this on WGR.